a message from somebody at the mall, 250 people in line right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous.
Well, and the other question, okay, good to have people coming out and voting, and not everybody can get off work early to go do so. Why the high turnout? Why the enthusiasm to actually get out and vote right now? I think it's the other part of this equation.
Why do you think it is?
Measure two, to be honest with you. I think you can break it down to three things. People are angry, perhaps being one of those scenarios. Measure two, and having the ability to actually vote for that. Or there's enthusiasm for a candidate out there that you and I have both missed, or at least I have. I can't speak for you, but I think it's either got to be measure two or there's enough right or wrong, and that's why people decided to come out and vote.
Well, I think you're right about measure two, and I think that anybody who thinks that measure two is going to bring more of their voters out, I think is wrong as well, because I don't think that measure two is a Democrat or a Republican measure. I don't think it's necessarily an independent measure. It's a measure for everyone. Yeah. I've been predicting that measure two is going to pass for quite some time.
Same here. Once that got approved to be on the ballot, I said, this one's done. This is going to be approved. Measure one is so up in the air right now. If you gave me something that I have no idea what to expect tonight, because I know of a lot of people that would text into Afternoons Live, and you can text us and join the conversation tonight at 35270, saying, look, I know there's flaws in this. I'm still going to vote for it. So how do you gauge that?
Well, I mean, to me, the whole synopsis of marijuana use, the oldest generation we have amongst us now has used marijuana. My father's generation, if this vote had been in front of them, absolutely, positively no. Right. But that Vietnam era group all had been around marijuana, and some of the myths that people put out there, they don't believe. Yeah. And so I think it passes.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think some of the ads that you're hearing in opposition to Measure 2 right now, I don't think they're hitting the right tone.
No.
I think that's old news.
Somebody texted in and said, my friend in Tower City couldn't vote because the closest polling place is in Castleton and he had to work. There's a lot of truth in that. Yeah. There were people in the news and views today that were quite upset about that. Yeah. Here's the other part, and I truly believe this, and we need to have this debate later on. I think that today, Election Day, should be a national holiday. I think it should be a day where everybody has off. They can go vote. JJ Gordon's on with us now. JJ, good to have you on. Where are you at right now?
Well, I am in the Roger Maris wing of West Acres Mall right now, Joel, and I'll tell you what I can see. I see a lot of people who are waiting patiently to cast their vote, and when I say a lot of people, my count right now between the two different lines, they've got two separate lines here, are well over 300 people still waiting to vote. They've got security who have ended each line, as well as some poll workers, and they are turning away a lot of people who did not get here by the 7 o'clock shutoff. I can tell you that right now. Some people are very frustrated by it. Some people look at their watch and say, oh, well, this is definitely a backlog of people waiting to vote.
Well, if you go to KFGO.com right now, you can watch us with our election night coverage, and he would see me shaking my head at what JJ just said.
There's a couple things to be aggravated about. I mean, people, come on. We knew that the polls closed at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
There's a part of the education process that you got to take that upon yourselves. But the fact that we had to narrow this down again to 10 polling places in a county as big population-wise in North Dakota as Cass County, this has got to be the last straw here.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't continue on with this.
JJ, what's the mood? I mean, what are people saying to you?
Well, gosh, I can tell you there's two different moods, Joel. The people who've been waiting for an hour and a half and are finally getting to the polls are very happy to be done with it. They're excited to get something to eat and watch some results. If you are at the back of the line, it is sort of unbelievable how long. If I had to estimate time based on the number of people I'm seeing move through here and how quick it is, some of these people are probably going to be here until 9 o'clock tonight, just to be, blatantly honest. It's not moving incredibly fast, and there are just so many people still wanting to cast their ballot.
That's just unacceptable. Yeah. It really is. JJ, give us some more reports later, would you?
You betcha.
You bet. JJ Gordon with It Takes Two. Tyler, we talk about long lines. We talk about the drive to get out to vote. You mentioned Measure 2. Mm-hmm. Could there be anything else there that they're looking at in terms of, hey, this is getting me out to vote?
Well, and that's a question I've been trying to figure out all day, because these lines and the wait times, and if you are in Cass County, I know we got a large audience with KFGO.com watching us across the upper Midwest here, but in Cass County, they've had a dashboard about wait times. And it's been consistent in some of these spots showing that you've had an hour wait. So I've been trying to figure out, what is it? Is it just measure 2? Is there a candidate out there? Is it just the frustration if the way things are going in Washington? I don't really know, Joel.
Well,
I don't know what the other X factor would be.
The only other X factor that could be is one that might make Kelly Armstrong nervous, which is I saw a lot of people today that went out and voted, one in particular. Okay, here's an example, and I won't give her name, but I got my hair cut, and this person about as independent as anybody I know, probably leans a little bit to the right, if anything. And I said, have you voted? She said, I'm gonna. I said, well, who are you going to vote for? What's making you that fired up? I said, and I did say to her, I said, where are you at when it comes to marijuana? She goes, oh, I'm going to vote yes, but I don't use it. And, you know,
a lot of people.
Yeah, she goes, whatever. I tried it once and no, nothing like that. But that wasn't driving her. What was driving her was actually Aamodt. That's what made her want to get out and vote. Now, you got to understand, this is a middle-aged woman.
I heard that similar situation up at the Fargo-Dome earlier, that, and the Fargo-Dome right there is NDSU, and the ability just to walk across a couple of streets as a college student and cast that ballot means a lot. And one of the things that I heard, nobody really wanted to talk about who they were voting for until the people that were asked who they're voting for. The only one that wanted to say anything were people that were voting for Aamodt. So I don't know. I mean, everyone else kind of plugging their nose, or there's an enthusiasm behind her that is clearly present if people are willing to at least say that that's who they're voting for.
There's nobody with $20 in their pocket here in the studio that is going to say, I'm betting on Mund. Okay, I recognize that. But what is a win tonight for Aamodt?
40. I think 35-40% getting there, and that solidifies you as a legitimate candidate. If she sticks around, if she doesn't come out on top tonight, she sticks around, there's people already eyeing other races where she could be a viable candidate in 2 years, in 4 years.
See, I think it's got to be higher.
You think it's got to be higher than 40?
I think she's got to take Armstrong below that 60 mark. If she gets him down into that 56, 57, that's significant. And, of course, if she's listening to us right now, Mund is probably saying, well, it's a win. But you're absolutely right. And I said this a lot during my show, which was the person should be the most nervous about a really good night tonight for Aamodt, that's the most nervous should be Kevin Kramer.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. Let's get to Derek Hansen, who's at the Fargo-Dome. Derek, what do you have for us?
I literally walked in the door here, Joel, and as I was walking in, one guy and a bunch of people are shaking their heads, and the one guy said, and I can't say everything that he said on the radio, so this is bleeping you-know-what, and you have to wait in line for 2 hours to vote in Fargo, North Dakota, and I mean, this is embarrassing. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the fact that you have this. And I guess the only thing I could say is I voted Friday to avoid any of this, and maybe that's just what the route everyone's going to try to have to go now, early voting, but this is unacceptable. When you have people walking out in Fargo, North Dakota, this is stuff that we see in the news, in Georgia, North Carolina during, some of these major elections that we're having. There's no reason this should be happening in Fargo. And I think for people who are not used to it too, guys, it really makes it even more aggravating.
J.J. Gordon sending in 250 in one line at the mall, cut off using mall security and the poll workers to keep the end and not allowing new people to come in and stand. He sent a photo of it. The shorter line, roughly 175.
That's still a lot of people.
Derek, there's 53 counties in the state of North Dakota, and I doubt we'll hear this from any other county. And I realize Cass County is the biggest county, but Burleigh County is heavily populated. I mean, they've got a right to be shaking their head, Derek.
Yeah, well, I mean, I came here to report because you're hearing all these stories and all that. So I thought, and then the first moment I walk into the Fargo-Dome, and I'm trying to get upstairs to, I'm trying to tell them I'm not a voter. I'm a Minnesota resident. I'm just trying to report on what's going on here. But the cars that are still here on the parking lot of the Fargo-Dome, I was at the Minnesota Section Championships last Friday. It's relative to that. So I'm anxious to get upstairs to see what it's like because there's still got to be a lot of people in line. Because there's people coming down the escalator like crazy. Because I'm still in the mezzanine area here, and just to think that this is going on still, it's amazing. But Boy, that was quite a shock to the system when that gentleman walked out.
Derek, find the biggest, toughest guy and ask him how you voted for Congress, would you? Because I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna the way the mood is around here. I'm not gonna touch that with a 10-foot pole. Trust me.
Smart man.
Ask them how they voted on marijuana. They might be more giving on that.
Well, that might be a good one. I think I'll maybe test my audience and hopefully, But,
I'm thinking after the wait tonight, some people are going to say I might need that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no question. But boy, to hear 2 hours here, that is amazing.
That's ridiculous. Here we are, folks. It's election night, and we're talking about the same thing we did 2 years ago and 4 years ago. Our news team is out as about. You just heard Derek Hansen. You heard J.J. Gordon. You're going to hear more. We're going to give you reports from the field as Tyler Axness, Amy Eiler, Abby Miller all come to you live from the studio right after this. Welcome to our election night coverage here on the Mighty 790 KFGO. Tyler Axness in studio with me, Joel Heitkamp, Amy Eiler behind the board. We're going to be pulling her into the conversation a little bit. Abby Eiler. Abby Miller.
If all four of us chime in, we can get it.
Too many times here. Sorry, Ab. We're going to be talking with her as well.
Yeah.
If you go to KFGO.com, you can watch the whole deal. Want to put this out there, Tyler, and get your take on it. If you didn't get your absentee ballot done in time, that's your own fault. Absentee ballot voting also prevents you from having to stand in line. There's no reason a person couldn't vote with having the absentee ballot option. That option allows anybody who has to work to be able to vote. Your thoughts?
Well, that texter's right. Now, here's the thing. We either have to embrace and accept mail-in voting or stop people from lying about what happens when you vote by mail, because we've seen over the last 2.5+ years a coordinated effort to say vote by mail is just riddled with fraud. Now, you and I know, and people listening, that there are some counties across the upper Midwest that only vote by mail. And then if we want to really dive deep into this, the last major election that we had was during COVID, in which everybody was being encouraged to vote by mail.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have limited the polling places. We've had a tough time finding workers because some of the same rhetoric that's gone against vote by mail has gone against the old canvassing board. All these things have kind of boiled up, and now we're seeing the frustration play out. The point about absentee voting, though, if we're going to allow it, then we've got to debunk all the lies that have been used about people that are voting by mail. You know, I mean, let's embrace it. Let's spread it out, promote it, and then then encourage more people to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. Some of the races that we really need to keep an eye on, and by the way, this comes from a friend out west. He was asked, and this, I'm guessing he was either in the Forbes or Ellendale area. He said he was asked if he was a U.S. citizen. Did you get asked when you voted?
I did.
Amy Eiler, did you get asked when you voted?
Yes, I did.
And Abby Miller, did you get asked?
Yep, I did.
As long as it's consistent.
Yeah.
That's what I've said about that all along. And this is a fairly conservative friend that I have. He said he voted for Mund. And this gentleman hasn't voted anything other than R a lot in his life.
You know, there's when we talk about that silent majority, I'll be curious how much longer they're going to be silent and if they're going to be a majority this time around or not. I mean, if people, once you get in that ballot box, your vote's between you and that person willing to text you about that. But that says a lot, though. I mean, Joel, it really does.
I want to go over some of the key races locally and then nationally with you. When you look at what you're going to really keep a close eye on, we talked about Mund Armstrong. We haven't touched upon the Senate race yet, but just those local races, what are you going to be watching?
The local races I'm going to be watching, District 25 down in Richland County, because you've got Jim Dotson-Rod, a former state senator, versus Larry Lueck, a current state senator. There is also people that were drawn out of districts down there. And in conjunction with 25 and District 11, you've seen some of the most nasty flyers come out from out of state, and I want to know if they've had any impact.
Yeah. There was actually one of the candidates, and now that voting's done, I don't think that they can say I'm just bashing her, but Kathy Scraw rushed and took a picture with the new president of the State College of Science's wife, and then posted that out there as though she was endorsed.
Oh, and I had seen because of that, the president had to put out an email today from NDSES saying, "Look, this wasn't approved."
Yep.
You can't be just randomly using photos from people that are in an authoritative role like that.
Right, and that had been happening a lot in that race. A lot of things had been happening. The forum wrote about it, some of what Kathy Scraw had done. And so I'm going to be watching that very close as well. Obviously, we have someone that I got the privilege of working with for years. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm not trying to pretend that I'm not partisan here when it comes to Megan Edwardson. She worked so hard. We'll find out, because that's a seat in a swing district that Pam Anderson held before.
Yeah, District 41 down in southern part of Fargo, southeastern part of Fargo, for those that aren't familiar with the district. That's one that I'll be watching as well, because as you said, Pam Anderson, and that's a former Al Carlson seat as well. It is a swing district. Up in Grand Forks, District 43, you've got a few Democrats up there as well. And the reason I point that out is because people are expecting that red wave. So if they're saying, well, why are you watching some of these districts? Well, those are going to be the tell. If Democrats in North Dakota, of all places, can maintain some of these seats and, if they get lucky, pick up one even, I think that tells a big story out here.
Well, it's 7:26. Derek just sent me a note saying there's still hundreds of people in line at the Fargo Dome. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, and they're going to be there for a while.
They're going to be there for a while.
Now, earlier today, I don't mean to talk ill of some of the wait, but those poll workers were moving things pretty smoothly. I bet you there's some fatigue going on out there. It's been a long day from 7 to now almost 7:30.
See, I don't think you can do anything with the poll workers except thank them.
Yeah.
I think that it's the system that was set up to handle things in Cass County that's flawed here. The poll workers are the ones that were put right in harm's way when it comes to the anger people are going to have about this.
Well, and a question was sent my way from a friend wondering, is it the increase in turnout right now, or is it the lack of finding some poll workers that are willing to do the job?
Well, there might be some of that, but they certainly need more sites.
They do. I don't think there's any question about that.
Somebody texted in, said, voted in Horace at 3. They had run out of ballots and had to vote on touchscreen. Only 8 touchscreens, which created a bottleneck. Ridiculous! Exclamation point! Exclamation point!
And that is ridiculous. And I had somebody vote in southern Fargo at one of the churches down there that you have the express lane, which is the computerized way of voting. I've done this now twice. I did the first time in June, now today as well. seamless, but that was taking longer than the paper ballots at that church. For whatever reason, I don't know, but there's been bottlenecks that have been brought up now in multiple places of these polling sites.
Somebody really upset about all this. They're calling it voter suppression. Also saying, look, everybody should get a ballot. Others people saying, listen, polling day needs to be a national holiday. You know, in honor of the people that we take a look at. Okay, we look at Jefferson Day. We look at Martin Luther King Day. I'm sorry, but how more patriotic thing can you have than allowing everybody to have the day off and go vote?
Well, and if you got a reason why that shouldn't be the case, 35270, I'd be more than curious in what the explanation is to why this is a bad idea.
Exactly. New districts, particularly the new 10 on Central Fargo. Curtis Olafson running there for the R's, but my guess it goes blue. I don't know that district as well. It's all new.
That's one of the
my
new
district.
Yeah, that's the new district here.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
You know, it's interesting. I thought that Olafson and Swantek did some heavy campaigning in that district.
Up in Harwood right now, I've been receiving mailer after mailer from Swantek.
Well, Steve
There's
Swantek.
been a lot of money being spent from Steve Swantek.
Steve Swantek has such a great reputation in this
He
town.
does.
He's done so much community work and everything else. So, KFGO.com, if people want to watch what's happening.
Yeah, you can watch us do radio at KFGO.com, but also, you mentioned the sites where these parties are taking place. You got the Democrats, you've got the Republicans. I don't know where the Measure 2 party is. I don't know if that's in a basement. We'll talk about that later. But
they call it the Rolling Stones.
Yes, they're playing some Grateful Dead somewhere. But Ryan Janke, Sweet Shots is where Ryan Janke is, and we're going to check in with him next.
Okay, just also want to get this out there. Kindred polling site is closed. They had to drive to Castleton.
Unreal.
This person isn't happy as well. Welcome back to our election night coverage here in the studios of KFGO. And of course, you can follow us on KFGO.com. Carl Springer texted me a second ago, was trying to find out exactly how to watch our coverage. He said, don't worry, my 12-year-old figured it out.
Thank God for that 12-year-old, Carl.
Exactly.
Thanks for watching us at KFGO.com.
You bet. Now, in Minnesota, the polls are open till?
8 o'clock.
Okay,
Yeah,
so there's still time there.
So for those, we have this little rule between, I think, at least our two shows, because there used to be a law in North Dakota that you didn't politic on election year, on election day. Minnesota, that was foreign to you. You said, well, what's the big deal? We've been doing it this entire time. So with that being an unwritten rule, we're not going to probably comment on some of those races over there. That District 4 Senate race had a lot of people's attention all the way out in St. Paul. Nationally, those ads that were running, we'll talk about that as we do watch some of those results come in as well.
Here's another complaint that an individual has, and I think it's a valid complaint. They said last Friday, early voting at the Fargo Dome, my son said he had to pay $5 to park because there was an event at the Dome. They would not let him park without paying. Could this be considered voter suppression? The Dome needs to get this figured out for future voting. That's legitimate.
That there was Minnesota football, high school football was taking place at the Fargo Dome because I had one of those, and I'll be full honest with you. This was a lazy moment for me. I was going to go vote early. I typically vote early for whatever reason in June, and now today I didn't. But I drove up there on Friday to the Fargo Dome where I was going to vote on my way home for lunch. And I remembered, because the parking lot was full, that there was football going on. And I saw those $5 signs. I didn't pull in, so I don't know. And I just assumed that, hey, if you say I'm going there to vote, they would waive that $5 fee. Now, if they're not, there's a whole other conversation that needs to be had about some of the practices there, because that is not appropriate at all to be charging someone to park to go and vote.
I totally agree. Somebody said Cass County needs to figure out more polling places, but this is also a lesson for those of us in the Midwest that too many places in our country have purposely reduced voting sites in minority areas to disenfranchise voters. Ryan Janke is with us. Ryan, tell us where you're at and what you're seeing.
I am at Sweet Shots here in South Fargo. I'm at the Republican election night party, and within the last 10 minutes here, Joel, it has really gotten busy. I got here right at 7, and within the last probably 15 minutes, probably 150 people have walked through the door, and there's a lot of energy in here. Attorney General Drew Wrigley is here. Several other candidates. Tony Grinberg is here. Candidates not only just from Fargo, but from surrounding areas as well.
That doesn't surprise me. Election nights, Tyler, we've both been through them. Sometimes it's a great party. Sometimes it's not a great party.
Sometimes you can't wait for those results to come in soon enough. And other times, okay, it's time to maybe get another round. But.
So, Ryan, let us know when you tie in with one of these guys. Call us back and let's get them on air, okay?
All right, sounds good.
You bet. Ryan Janke from our news team right here.
And if they haven't been listening, Joel, if they're showing up right now thinking, okay, polls close at 7, we'll get results by 8 o'clock, well,
you're going to wait.
Yeah, get a seat. It's going to be a little while.
See, and what frustrates me about how Cass County's doing things is it affects the state as a whole.
I think we're a third of the population in Cass County alone.
Exactly.
For the entire state.
So until those results come out, you can have a candidate that's sitting there at an election night party in Bismarck, for example, just wanting to find out the results to know whether they should go home, go to bed, or stay up a little late and party.
And there's that mentality out there of imperial Cass. You know that from being in the state Senate. Well, this doesn't help matters at all when you're waiting across the state for these results.
Somebody said Cass County fired their former election administrator in early October. Seems like a whole new team running the show.
I remember Mike Montplaisir was retiring, I thought. Who was
that
the
was
former.
Before this election, though.
Yeah,
and
it was. But I don't think any firing happened. I think Mike was just retired. And Mike had put his time in a number of years. I don't know how long, but so I'm going to push back. I don't know if there was any firing at all, but I know that we do have a whole new team.
Well, they need more polling sites.
I think that with the turn to voter centers instead of in your precincts, the number one problem is that Cass County didn't get the word out. There should have been some sort of campaign to let voters know that A, there wasn't going to be as many polling sites available to them on election day, or B, they should have sent out an absentee ballot application like they did in 2020 knowing full well what we had happen in June.
And Amy, I think you're spot on, because I know as somebody that voted at the Fargo Dome that was hearing people in line around them ask that question, why are there so many people here right now, and having to be explained in that line while they're waiting to vote of, hey, we don't vote by precinct anymore. It is now you show up to these sites, which there's 10 of them sprinkled throughout. I mean, mostly in Fargo. We had Castleton, Arthur, as somebody said, in Kindred as well. So if that word didn't get out, I think there were some examples of that happened right here in Fargo earlier.
All right, let's get our news director, Paul Juergens, on. His whole news team is out and about trying to get every story they can. Jurgie, what do you have for us?
Well, there aren't many stories to get right now, to be honest with you. Referencing the election staff at the county, Deanne Buckhouse, I'm told, left as the election coordinator in early September for health reasons.
Okay.
And that's what I have been told by people at the county. And I don't know what those health reasons were, but that is what I've been told. And, of course, Mike Montplaisir, as you mentioned, retired after 33 years as the auditor finance director. So
well, I think that's an important distinction to make with Deanne.
I have no knowledge that she was fired,
Yeah.
as the emailer said.
Okay. What I would add to all of that, though, is Mike, who we talked to many, many times about all of this, we got results quicker.
Yeah, we did.
I think that's something that we need to point out as well. Somebody said, time to be a big boy and a big girl and make you understand that you need to vote. If you're complaining about how long it took, get out and vote, volunteer, because polls are staffed by volunteers.
Well,
you still need sites to volunteer.
There's only limited slots of spots for somebody to actually go do that work. And I don't believe they're volunteers. They are paid. They're trained to do some of this. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think poll workers are paid. I mean, it's not like they're making a lot of money, but...
Yeah. But you have to agree to do it.
You do, absolutely. Yeah. And you have to be able to have the time to volunteer. But let's not give shade to these people who are standing in line to vote at an appropriate time. You should be able to go after work and be able to cast your vote. Yeah. Okay, so the polls are open until 7. You should be able to get off of work at 5 and still get your vote in.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah. Somebody said, Joel, I just voted in Moorhead, in and out in 15 minutes. Precinct was east and organized. They even had drive-up voting for disabled folks.
Yeah. Wow.
Boy, what does that tell you? I'm curious about this. We've got 3 people in here that voted today. I voted absentee because, I live in Richland County and I wouldn't have made it home to vote. But, Abby, you told me that you just like to vote on Election Day.
Yeah, I do like to vote on Election Day, but maybe not this year.
And Amy, you said the same thing.
Yep,
and Tyler,
I do.
You did as well. So I'm going to ask all 3 of the same question. Do you think that it's time to make people, or at least really push people to vote by mail, Abby, instead of doing this all on Election Day?
Unless you can leave your job or whatever to vote earlier in the day, if you're not able to vote earlier in the day, you should vote by mail. So this year's a perfect example. Otherwise, you're going to wait for 2 hours and you're not going to get results.
AI, what do you think?
I think that the county should have been upfront about what was going to happen. There's no way that they didn't see this coming. We saw this in June. We saw lines backed up. We saw big wait lines. We were on these airwaves at that time in June when we had backups. And I think that if they knew the early vote numbers weren't where they needed to be to not make the lines that happened today, then I think that the county should have been more upfront. I don't think it's my job to decide, I need to vote early because the lines are going to be too long. Right. That's the job of the election officials in Cass County to decide that either we need to go back to our precinct locations and get the volunteers and staffs needed to do that, or they need to send out absentee ballots applications to every single person in the county like they did during COVID.
Tyler, your thoughts?
Yeah, you turn 18, you get a number of things sent to you. You get the things for college, you get the things for the draft, all these things that you could fill out. When you turn 18, you get that absentee application in the mail regardless of where you live.
That was one of the big arguments, though, nationwide after the 2020 election, was that all this mail-in voting, COVID, a lot of different reasons, that's where some of the election fraud was and people that believed there were. or there was election fraud.
And you know what made me so mad about that, Joel, is you had people in North Dakota that vote by mail every single election still lying about mail-in voting for other states.
Well, and you have people in North Dakota where the county doesn't have polling places.
Yeah.
Where that's the only way they can.
I know. The home county for me is Benson County. There's one polling place in Minnewacan, which is the county seat.
Yeah.
If you don't vote by mail, there's times where you would have to drive an hour plus to get there. That's wrong.
Somebody put out there, voted in Wahpeton at the event center at 8 a.m. Very busy, but was in and out in 10 minutes. Another one. Joel, why do you dance around? This is voter suppression, peer and corrupt by the Republicans. I don't know what.
I think this is just incompetence by the decision-making in Cass County right now with the amount of votes that are out.
Somebody also threw out there, if Rick Becker fails to get at least 25%, can the mainstream finally tell the Boschee caucus to be quiet? We'll talk about that when we get back with our election night coverage right after this. Welcome back to Election Night coverage here on the Mighty 790 KFGO. The whole team is out and about. We're going to be hearing from them as we go. Tyler Axness in studio, Amy Adler, Abby Miller. The whole gang is here making sure we have all the information out there. Go to KFGO.com with that as well. Ryan Janke is out at Republican headquarters, or should say where the Republican Party is going to be, and he's got Jim Jonas with him, state house candidate from West Fargo. Ryan, what is soon to be Representative Jonas, who I think is running unopposed, feeling pretty good about this race?
He is, yeah. You know what? I'll have you talk right to the man himself.
All right. Tyler, you go ahead.
Hey, Joel, and hi, Tyler.
Hey, Representative-elect Jonas, how are we feeling out there?
I'm feeling wonderful. I'm out here with my wonderful wife, Denise, and we're celebrating a long campaign. Even though I ran unopposed, it's been a long time since declaring in March, and then the election on April 5th, the primary, and then today.
Well, and Representative-elect, you had to campaign against a longtime incumbent over in District 13 with Representative Kim Koppelman. So this wasn't just an unopposed race in this long term. But now that this election day is here, I know we're still waiting for election results to get in. Now that this is behind you, what's next out here? I know that we still have some results to wait on, but what comes next?
Well, I'm really working hard on trying to get on the education committee. As you know, my background in education and also being on the school board in West Fargo, there's nothing more dear to me than education. And I think our biggest resource in North Dakota are our kids, our students. And so I'm working hard to get on the education committee and then work on teacher retention and salary and per pupil payments. And I'm so excited for the opportunity to represent West Fargo in the legislature and North Dakota. So it's, Tyler, I'm just thrilled with today.
Now, Representative Jonas, this isn't your first, run at public service. You've been willing to serve on that school board for a long time. It seems to me that the education committee is where you belong. You can add a lot to it, having been a coach, an educator, on a school board. That being said, you're also going to be part of a very, very big majority. Do you think it helps at all having someone with the experience of a Judy Lee out there as your running mate that can maybe work the hallways a little bit for you?
That's a real good point, Joel. Judy's been a good mentor, a great mentor, I should say. Her and Austin Schauer helping me through the selection process and helping me learn some of the ropes of what's going to go on once we get out to Bismarck. So, yeah, you hit it. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I've met with all kinds of people that have been very nice, from Mike LaFleur to Robin Weiss and other legislators that are willing to help take the time.
Representative Jonas, I'm curious because there's going to be a lot of leadership changes out in Bismarck. The House Majority Leader that was out there is retiring, same on the Senate side. Have you been approached by any of those members asking for your vote for leadership?
Yes, I have. I think all three of them have approached me for the leadership of the majority, and then for the House, yeah. And it's an interesting process. I had lunch with my old football coach today, Pat Simmers, and he told me a long time ago when I was entering politics, listen to learn to lead. And I still abide by those. So I've been very observant the past few months. And I know on Monday we vote on majority leaders and out in Mandan. So it'll be an interesting night.
Okay. Well, congratulations to you. Quite frankly, I never doubted for a moment that you were going to win once you were running unopposed. But I will tell you this. I've known you for quite some time, back in the stripes and coaching days, and you're nothing but class. You're going to be good at this. And so I do mean it sincerely. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Jones.
Well, I appreciate it, guys, and I'm excited to represent West Fargo and North Dakota, and have a wonderful evening, and thank you guys for all you do.
You bet.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. There's someone that I don't believe – it'll be interesting to see how this works, because I don't believe he's got a partisan bone in his body.
No, personally knowing Representative Jonas as I do, I don't believe so either. I think he's proven that while he's been on the school board in West Fargo. And why I had to ask that question of there's people jockeying for, being the House Majority Leader. I've heard two of the names, and I didn't get the third one out there. But this is going to be an interesting tell, because you're going to have a lot of new faces out in Bismarck, just like Representative Jonas, because of retirements, because of people choosing not to run again, people that might be defeated in this coming election. And you're going to have a whole new process going forward for somebody like that to actually get on the committees that seem to make sense, like an education committee.
Let's talk national politics a little bit. When you look at some of the races and how it's breaking out, I think it's fairly easy to see that I just want to add one thing. The last voter has left the Civic Center. vis-a-vis Tasha Carvel reporting the doors are locked now. You look at the national races, I think it's well conceded that the Republicans are going to control the U.S. Congress after this. But some of those Senate races, man, it's going to be close on some of those.
And here's what I want everyone to understand, because I think there was some of that misunderstanding and that no fault of people's first time actually following through. Joel, I think that there's this education that you go out, you cast your ballot, you fill in the blanks, or you go on the computer, you put it into the computer, and then you watch for that number to tick, you get your sticker, and then that's it. Now, in 2020, what happened? For the first time, a lot of people voted by mail, and those counts come in differently depending on what state you're in, and that's by law. And what happened in 2020 was, for the first time, people were watching that process. They didn't understand it. They were lied to about what happens between those that vote on election day and those that vote by mail. Now, what happened in 2020 was those counts that were brought in right away were on election day, and that showed that these people are up. They're up big, and some of those people try to declare themselves winner. And what happens is you start counting those votes that came in by mail, and things didn't end up the same as election night. That's going to be the exact same thing that happens in some of those U.S. Senate races this time around.
Well, and here's the interesting thing, ladies and gentlemen, call me partisan, call me whatever you want, but the states that passed measures that didn't allow a pre-counting of the votes are red states. That they have passed laws so that those ballots cannot be counted prior to election day, so that the results can't get out there. Now, that being said, then they're mad because they're not counted on time that night. Well, with early voting, that's a mountain of ballots, and so you can't have your cake and eat it too.
No, and there was millions upon millions of votes that were cast before election day, including right here in North Dakota. Now, I've got pulled up on my tablet here. Every state, of course, if we want to have states being in charge of election laws, then we've got to appreciate and respect what their decisions are. North Dakota process before election day, counted after polls close for absentee and mail-in ballots. Same thing for Minnesota. We're going to be talking about Pennsylvania. We're going to be talking about Georgia. We're going to be talking about Arizona. All three of them have different ways of which they count those vote by mail ballots. So you're going to be hearing people saying, well, stop the count and all these things. And it's because of those early votes that came in. And now in those states, what's different than North Dakota? They registered. You know who actually went out and voted if they, in fact, adhered to that voter registration, what they identify as.
You bet. When we come back, we're going to continue our coverage here, live from the KFGO studios and out and about with our whole team on our election night coverage. Go to KFGO.com and share in with us by video as well.
On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag, I miss you, was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back, a better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd wanna be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat, walking on a New York street, a pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet, but that's the truth. And 2 pictures buried in a guitar case, underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that had like to be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. And all the days from now to then, if they never seem to come or to go, will find me in your memories that keep you from getting so low. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. Down the line, we'll meet up down the line. Down the line. On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag, I miss you, was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back, a better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd want to be, and how many days I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat walking on a New York street, a pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet? But that's the truth. And two pictures buried in a guitar case, underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls and times that I've told.
Welcome back to our election night coverage. Tyler Axness, Amy Eiler, Madison Quinn, Abby Miller, all in studio with me, Joel Heitkamp. But first, we head to our newsroom and our news director, Paul Juergens. Jurgie? There you go. Jurgie? All right, we're going to work out those details. We'll get Jurgie on as quick as what we can here. I know we're also going to tie in with Bill Werner when we get a chance with the Minnesota News Network.
Well, and Joel, one thing that I could tell people to do, two things. Go to KFGO.com. You can watch us do live radio, but you can also, the Secretary of State's websites for both North Dakota and Minnesota are at the top of our homepage. So you can go check out some of the results. You can be one of those people that keeps clicking refresh, waiting for those updates as well, as these results do trickle in here.
Okay. Amy Eiler's telling me that I can head to the newsroom and find the news director, Paul Juergens.
Yes, we have some early results in now for North Dakota in the U.S. Senate race. Senator Hoeven, this is with 22 of 398 precincts. Senator Hoeven, 55% of the vote roughly. Katrina Christensen, 28.2. Rick Becker with 15%. Hoeven, Christensen, Becker. Again, these are very early results. In the congressional race, Congressman Armstrong leading Carl Mund, 9,500 votes roughly to 5,500 from Mund, to 61 to 37% split there. And let's see, we have also for, these are just in here, Drew Wrigley leading Tim Lamb in the Attorney General's race. Wrigley with about 10,000 votes, 4,400 for Tim Lamb. Ag Commissioner Doug Goring, a comfortable lead, 10,592 to Finton Dooley's 3,900 votes. And Public Service Commission, Julie Fedorchak, a comfortable lead over Melanie Munoz. Sherry Hofart, appointed by Governor Burgum to the PSC, leading Democrat Trygve Hammer, comfortably 9,400 and some votes for Hofart. Hammer's 4,763. So those are very early results just coming into KFGO from the Secretary of State's website. Secretary of State Michael Howell, the Republican from Cass County, 8,767 votes. Jeffrey Powell, a Democrat, 4,616. And Charles Tuttle from Minot, just over 1,000 votes.
No surprises there,
No.
Tyler. The only thing that jumped out at me there was the spread between Kelly Armstrong and Carl Mund.
Yeah. And I'll be curious where these precincts are as well, where they're trickling. And I'll push back. There's two things. Rick Becker only getting 15% right now out of this race. Now, why I bring that up? You were away yesterday, understandably, for some family reasons here. And Jim Shaw, Al Carlson were in the studio having a good old-fashioned conversation, if you will, about these races. And Al Carlson let it slip because, Al is still part of that good old boys club of having the insider information. He mentioned that there was internal polling that they had. He didn't disclose who paid for what poll, that it had Rick Becker at 15%.
So he's pretty accurate.
Yeah, that poll might be all right. Yeah. So I don't know. That stood out to me as well. Only because Al Carlson let that one slip on accident.
Al's got connections, shall we say. The only other thing I would add in all of that is I had a conversation with Al this morning, and he felt that the the race between Mund and Armstrong was going to be nowhere near as close as what I suggested it might be. But half the reason I was poking the bear was just to poke the bear. But
What?
I still,
I'm stunned to hear that. Shocked.
but I still believe that that some of that is going to tighten up in certain areas of the state. Like you said, is this all in western North Dakota where you know you're going to get a 3-1 margin, or where?
Here's what we know. It's not Cass County. It's not Cass County results. And if anything, you're going to see anything.
Nope, I was
close
actually
up.
just going to mention that to you guys. In fact, JJ Gordon's still out at West Acres at this hour. He is watching the line dwindle as people are leaving, not casting their ballots because of the line that's
This
there.
is this is an
JJ we got?
absolute failure.
Okay.
In Cass
Dakota
County.
Rudisell is on the line for you,
Okay.
so we can get to him
Absolute
next.
failure in Cass County, the way this election's been handled.
Well, and it
like
just, you go to the Secretary of State's website from North Dakota, and what you see there is you see them all waiting. I mean, they're going to wait, and nothing's really going to get decided in some of these areas because Cass County is, 1/3 of the state's population?
1/3 of the state's entire population.
Dakota Rudisell joins us now. Dakota, Tyler Axness, we're talking about a lot of things, not the least of which is national security when it comes to our elections. Dakota, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, ever since 2016, a lot of worry about our elections and national security because, as everybody knows, Russia mounted a major effort to intervene in that election through a number of different ways. They were active again in 2018 and 2020. The country was better prepared for it. There have been a number of reports over recent weeks about a number of Russian-affiliated entities. One of them is called KillNet. Talk about a scary name. It's a non-state actor, but pretty closely affiliated with the Kremlin. They've been launching a number of different cyber attacks against various U.S. government offices and state and local. They're pretty blunt. And so far, just reading the news, I mean, everything's pretty early at this point. Looks like not really much of any disruption. There was something out of somewhere in Illinois. There was one county that was having some issues that they attributed to a cyber attack. But, so far, this looks like a pretty good election. And, the hiccups we've been seeing in a number of states, I think with paper shortages and printers, I mean, this is, we're a country of, 380 million people. You're going to have some hiccups. So far, looks pretty good.
Dakota, if you look at it from the Ukrainian perspective of how these elections are going, I think we all know it's going to be a good night for the Republican Party. And yet you look at some of what's happening, and, we're NBC, by the way, just calling the race in favor of John Hoeven. So John Hoeven will be the winner, according to NBC, in that United States Senate race. But Dakota, you look at this, and, you see people that have been very boisterous about the fact that they don't want any further aid going to Ukraine. And, of course, the leader of the Republican Party is still Donald Trump, and he's expressed major concerns about that as well. So, a strong showing by the Republicans tonight has to make Vladimir Putin happy.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's interesting because I would just bet if you asked a bunch of rank and file, Republicans, they wouldn't necessarily describe themselves as like pro-Putin or anti-Ukraine. But, I think certainly, Russian President Vladimir Putin, sees in Donald Trump somebody who's extremely useful to him. Trump has done massive damage to the reputation of American democracy by claiming fraudulently, falsely, that there was this giant conspiracy that cost him the 2020 election and, instigating a violent attack on the United States Congress. This is just really great stuff. If you're an authoritarian like Putin and you've been sick of criticism from the United States and other advanced democracies about Putin's own authoritarianism, it's great to see America in chaos and discredited, its democratic institutions. So, I think from Putin's standpoint, any Republican victory that then emboldens Trump to, make a presidential bid. I think that's a win in Putin's mind. I think that gives him a warm fuzzy. I think it's an open question, actually, to whether a Republican Congress would actually really change that much about U.S. foreign policy. We might actually need to have somebody different in the White House for things really to change.
Okay. Dakota, thank you as always. The problem you have is we got your cell. So we're going to pester and pester. So I appreciate it. Let's get to Paul Juergens, news director in our newsroom. Paul?
We have some early results on the two measures in North Dakota now. We don't know where these votes are coming from. This is from the Secretary of State. 27 of 398 precincts. Measure 1. This is to limit the terms of the governor and state lawmakers. Yes votes 10,759, no 6,260. Percentage-wise, just over 63% to about 37%. Measure 2, legalizing marijuana, recreational marijuana in the state. Yes votes 6,809, no votes 10,289. Percentages just over 39% yes votes and about 60% no. That is Measure 2.
Interesting. Really interesting, Tyler. Your take on that?
That's Western North Dakota coming in. So that's my guess right there. That's my hot take right now.
But it is polling data.
It is.
You know, no matter where it's from, it shows an indication. The term limits, that doesn't surprise me at all.
It doesn't. And again, when I having conversations about both these measures and these races just in general, the one that kept standing out was people knowing and acknowledging, you know what, I like term limits. There's some flaws here. Waffle back and forth. I did the exact same thing while people were calling in and texting in about the good and the bad. But there was a lot of people that acknowledged it was bad that they were still going to vote for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you're seeing 63% saying yes on Measure 1 right now.
Well, for me, I predicted that that Measure 2 will pass, that recreational marijuana will become legal in the state of North Dakota, and so far the polling data isn't on my side.
It's a slim polling.
Yeah, it's a small sample.
Yeah, again, Cass County, these are not those numbers. But you're right. It's showing a snapshot of a part of the state, and if this continues to hold, then I'll be wrong on Measure 2 myself here.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing that should make independent legislators the most nervous is the fact that, hey, they will be termed out at some point. We're going to head with Ryan Janke back to Republican headquarters. In fact, we'll just tie directly in with Drew Wrigley, the Attorney General of the state of North Dakota. Drew, good to have you right here on KFGO.
It's good to be with you and your listeners tonight. Thanks for the opportunity.
Some of the early results show some really strong numbers for you. Your thoughts so far?
They are early, but candidly, we felt like the campaign has gone well, and we're looking forward to today. And so we sure appreciate those early returns. I have been asked a little bit tonight about what our plans are up ahead, and we've talked about that a bit, but the voters speak first. So we'll see how it goes tonight. But we feel like we're in a really good spot coming into Election Day, and so far, so good. The numbers are coming in about as we anticipated.
So this is a race that you were appointed to, and now, if things continue the way they are, that you're going to hold through election.
Yeah.
When you look at this from a standpoint of being able to do what you want to do in the office, has anything changed because of that?
Well, to some degree, Joel, because you come in, it's almost like parachuting in, coming in a situation like this. The untimely death of my predecessor, unexpected, of course, about 5 weeks after I declared my candidacy. And then you get into the role. I was going to campaign full time. I had a plan for the year ahead. That's what I was going to do. And then I've been campaigning very little time, relatively, because there's an enormous amount of work to do in the office. You and I have had the opportunity to speak on a number of these issues, and that's something I pledged before I was running. It's something I've shown in the last 10 months, and that's what I'm pledging to you, Joel, others in the media, and your listeners going ahead. If I'm given the privilege of serving for the next 4 years, that level of engagement and transparency is going to be maintained. I could go through a host of issues that have already come up, and that we're happy to be. I don't love talking about issues that aren't exactly 100%ers out in the news, and we're talking about building cost overruns that happened under my predecessor administration. I don't enjoy talking about it. It's real. It's almost $2 million, and we elevated that and went public. We addressed it publicly. We full disclosure of all the documents that we could. We cooperated with all the investigations, and what came out of that was we were really happy that we showed that transparency brings transformation. It can bring new policies. People are talking about some reform in the legislature, and I hope that happens. Well, now, last week, in addition to that, we find out we are going to be recouping hundreds of thousands of dollars for the state of North Dakota. I can give a longer, more boring recitation of that, but that's the kind of thing people are going to be able to count on us for. I will not just come on the air to talk about fun issues.
Yep.
We're going to come on and talk about the issues of the day. And Joel, I think you and I have had some good, healthy, sometimes a debate.
Yeah.
Sometimes discussions, and we'll continue that.
Yep, we'll continue it in the future. Thank you, Attorney General Wrigley, for coming on. I appreciate it. We're going to head to you bet. We're going to head to a break. We'll be back with more of our election night coverage at KFGO. Join us on KFGO.com. We'll be back with you right after this.
On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag: I miss you, was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back, a better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd wanna be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat, walking on a New York street, a pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet, but that's the truth. And 2 pictures buried in a guitar case, underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew.
Coverage right here on KFGO and KFGO.com. Joel Heitkamp, Tyler Axness, Amy Adler, Madison Quinn, Abby Miller in studio. We're going to tie in with the Minnesota News Network and Bill Werner. Bill, good to have you on this election night coverage. What are you seeing on the Minnesota side with some of the early results?
Yeah, well, and the polls just closed about 15 minutes ago, so I was just looking at the numbers, and they're kind of all zeros down the races. But so we're still waiting, but I think that we can say that probably by 9 o'clock we're going to have a fair number of results in from the metro area, and that's going to tell us how heavy a turnout in the metro area, whether in fact that plays Democrats' way or not. Certainly in the governor's race, that will be the case. The attorney general's race, where Keith Ellison is behind in all the polls, the recent polls, whether in fact there's a heavy enough turnout in the metro area to counteract Jim Schultz's Republican challenger's momentum in greater Minnesota. And all that stuff is, it's kind of, we're at that point where the polls just closed and the computers are starting to churn, and we'll get some numbers pretty quickly, I think, Joel.
The early numbers we're seeing with just 1% reporting.
Yeah, 1%, right.
We've got about 5,000 votes, which tells you exactly what you're getting at. But
right.
it looks like, outstate Minnesota, Scott Jensen taking just an early lead with, again, 1%, Bill.
Right. It depends on actually where those are all coming from. Mm-hmm. I think that it's fair to say that by 9 o'clock or certainly by 9:15 that we're going to have a much better idea with, I think, a pretty substantial portion of the metro weighing in. And that big block then will tell us, hey, is it really going heavily Democratic or only moderately Democratic, and then that may give us some indication for the rest of the evening.
Bill,
We'll see how it goes, Joel.
You bet. We'll touch base with you a little bit later. Let's tie in with J.J. Gordon and find out what it is like. I believe he's out at West Acres. J.J.?
Hey, Joel, Tyler, Abby, Amy, West Acres, the line is done. Right about 8:15, they brought the last ballot over to be counted. Ballot workers are packing up equipment. Of course, things are getting certified before they officially get counted. They've put away the roll of stickers. It was a long wait for a lot of people there tonight. A lot of folks with kids. In fact, there's a young man practicing his taekwondo while his mom was waiting in line to vote this evening. Certainly, a lot of people waited a long time. A lot of people dropped out. I counted over 25 people who left the line between 7:30 and 8 o'clock alone. I think it just became too much. Certainly, if it was hard for you to stand, for instance, that's a long time to be standing and just shuffling a little bit. There's not a lot of places to sit out at West Acres, but those polls have now closed. In fact, I got a chance to speak with the second to last gentleman who ran his ballot through, and I sent some audio back to Amy. This is an interview with a gentleman named Les who went through that line and did his civic duty today.
And
Les, what time did you get here tonight?
15 minutes till 7.
15 minutes till 7, and it is now 8:15. So you were in it for the long haul to vote tonight.
That's right. I was here, whether it took me till 10.
That's fantastic. And Les, are you from the metro area, or did you travel in?
Metro.
And you voted in quite a few elections?
Mm-hmm.
And what is important to you about voting?
Getting the right people in there.
Absolutely. And did you make some good selections? You get 100% on your test tonight?
What do you mean by 100%?
Well, did you vote for everyone you wanted to vote for this evening?
Oh, I voted for everybody I wanted to vote for, yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That was my mission.
Mission accomplished. Good for you. Thanks, Les.
You bet.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, good seeing you.
Good to see you as well. Thanks for doing your civic duty.
So, a perfect example. JJ, are you still with us there?
You betcha.
I've got to ask what the tone was. What was the mood there?
I would say this, frustration. The amount of people they moved through that line after they cut off people being able to stand in it at 7 o'clock was really amazing. Those poll workers, I was able to take part of your conversation. Thank you so much to the poll workers because they got people in as fast as they possibly could. The reality of the situation, as I see it, and from some of my conversations in line, is people who finished with work, had something to eat, and decided to come out and vote in that last, 5:30, get in line by 7 o'clock, did not expect a line that long.
Yeah.
And I think that turned away a lot of people. There was also a good amount of frustration from people who showed up at 7:01, 7:05, and were told that they cannot vote. They had to have been there by 7 o'clock on the dot.
Yeah, a lot of frustration. We're hearing that. And, of course, it's going to spill over, Tyler, statewide because everybody's going to be looking for those Cass County reports. We'll be back with more coverage right here on KFGO and KFGO.com.
On the road, headed back to New Orleans. Driving in the country, past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees. Mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag. I miss you was written in a message in black. Thrown in a van. It's 1,000 miles back, a better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd want to be. And how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. Given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. street. A pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet? But that's the truth. And two pictures buried in a guitar case. Underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that had like to be. And how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. And all the days from now to then, if they never seem to come or to go, will find me.
Welcome back to KFGO's coverage right here on election night. Joel Heitkamp, Tyler Axness, Amy Otter, Abby Miller, Madison Quinn in studio. If you go to YouTube, you're going to find us there. You can watch our election night coverage. Thank you to all of you who have. We're going to get to some comments that are being made on YouTube in just a little bit. But Mark Freese, one of the individuals that has been working towards making recreational marijuana legal in North Dakota, these poll numbers are, I shouldn't say poll numbers, these results so far are so small. In North Dakota, we're talking about 42 of 395 precincts, but you look at some of the totals, Mark, and so far the no vote outweighs the yes vote about 60-40.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Yeah, I suspect as some of the larger counties come in, I think that those numbers are going to change a bit, but we knew it was going to be close. We knew it all along.
Mark, Tyler Axness here, and I made a comment earlier because there have been, whether it's in Cass County, which we're going to be waiting a long time for those results, or whether it's Williams County, there have been people showing up in droves, and I attributed it to Measure 2. Did you get the same sense out there throughout the course of this campaign that this measure was motivating people to vote?
Well, I think so. I mean, the number of folks that actually signed on to the ballot measure far exceeded the number of signatures that we needed. So there was a lot of support for it, and a lot of people wanted to put it to the voters.
Well, Mark, let me throw this at you because clearly you're right about some of the big metro areas. I think that those are numbers that could come your way pretty strong. How frustrating is it going to be to know that Cass County isn't, I mean, it's going to be forever until we get the results from Cass County, Mark?
Yeah, I've talked to friends that went to vote at 4 or 5 this afternoon and are just getting home now. So it's frustrating, I think, for individual voters. It's frustrating for those of us that have been working campaigns. But I guess that's the reality.
Okay. Mark, we're going to – go ahead,
Well,
Tyler.
and I just saw this is not North Dakota, but North Dakota wasn't the only state that had this on the ballot. And if this is any sign of potential things to come, Maryland did just vote to legalize marijuana for adult use. So they're the 20th state. And, I think by the end of the night, we'll be figuring out. I still predict North Dakota is going to be the 21st.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Now we're talking about 54 of 395 precincts reporting and that gap narrowing some, Mark. So I'm sure we'll all keep an eye on it and give you a call back a little bit later, okay?
Hey, appreciate the coverage, gentlemen.
You bet.
Thanks,
Mark Freese, ladies and gentlemen. And now, here's the thing about Mark. He was against this before. He thought it was too loose. Former law enforcement officer, one of the top defense attorneys in the state, he was not in favor of recreational marijuana until they tightened up the legislation.
I remember Mark and the opposition to the last attempt being in this very studio explaining why you had to vote no on recreational marijuana the last time. I think this speaks volumes, not only to get someone like Mark Freese in his background to back this measure, go out there actively campaign for it, put their name on it, shows that the mentality has also shifted, and that you should be able to look at this law the way it was written, how it adheres to North Dakota's already existing statutes, and be comfortable knowing that this wasn't some out-of-state group trying to force-feed this on North Dakota. And I think that's what actually kind of diminished some of the opposition that was potentially out there, Joel.
Want to get some of the early results in on those North Dakota statewide races, the first being, and obviously the one that many of us are keeping an eye on, Kelly Armstrong versus Aamodt. Now, again, early results. You've got a Republican running against an independent, but these are pretty good polling. It's pretty good polling data, Tyler, fair to say, when it comes to statewide races. Kelly Armstrong leading with 64, almost 65% of the vote, and Aamodt right around that 34%. So, and again, not a lot of precincts in.
No,
but,
and that's the thing. And following along, again, go to KFGO.com. You can watch us with this coverage, but you can also go and check out and click the refresh button just like we are, and getting the results as quickly as we can on their Secretary of State site. And the counties that are coming in are mostly rural right now. And I think what Mark said is going to go the same for a lot of these statewide races. You're going to have a dumping of these votes come in. It's going to come in a hurry here. Is it going to be enough to narrow some of these gaps? I do believe so. In that particular race, is it going to be enough to flip where we are currently? I don't think so.
We're seeing some comments on YouTube. And again, thank you to all of you who are following us on YouTube tonight, so you can see how handsome Tyler is and how old I am. Somebody says, are the Cass County problems related to the loss of two longtime election officials who ran our elections for so long? We need to examine the problems and fix them with a lot of input from the public.
And I think that comment couldn't be more true than what it, I mean, just spot on analysis of where we are today, where we were in June. And if we don't have a serious conversation between now and the next election, we would have failed, whether it's on these airwaves or just as a community, because this is just hearing J.J. Gorn at West Acres Mall. And now that's one of 10 spots where people could have voted in Cass County. To hear that 25-plus people walked away in frustration, not voting even though they were in line, that's a failing.
Oh, big time failing. These are individuals who are doing their civic duty, AI, and unless we get our arms around this and fix it, Cass County, I can put it a lot of different ways, but there are going to be people ticked off.
Yeah, and you know what? They should be mad. They should be mad. We should expect that the polls are going to be open until 7 and that they're going to move people through an orderly fashion. And if they can't get it done, then they need to go back to sending out everybody a ballot application, an absentee ballot application like they did during COVID. But you're right. The loss of two people who ran our elections for a long time, maybe that is part of it. But we saw an inkling of this in June. I just keep going back to this. We saw this thing happen in June. Yeah. We were all sitting in the same room. We saw it happen with that primary race, and we knew, we could feel that this was going to be a problem in November.
And it didn't get fixed.
It didn't get fixed. There wasn't a campaign to get people out to early vote. There wasn't a campaign to get absentee ballots in people's hands. And this is what we're left with. And I think it's sad. If Cass County has one voter walk away unable to vote, they have not done their job.
Well, we all know from our reports from J.J. Gordon, we know there's been voters that have walked away.
Right.
Yeah. And we haven't touched base with Derek Hansen lately, and we should do that and find out what happened out at the Fargo Dome. Some more reports coming in from Minnesota. This is going to bounce back and forth, and as early voting gets reported. But it's pretty well an even heat. Right now, Scott Jensen with 8,000 votes, and Tim Walz with a little above 9,000 votes.
Well, and, depending on where those are, that's probably greater Minnesota. And that's where you heard Bill Werner say, when we get that dump of the cities, we'll know if there's a large enough margin there to keep Walz in the governor's office or not.
Yeah. And, of course, we're all looking. If you go to the Secretary of State in North Dakota's website, it's pretty good as well. You'll find that link at KFGO.com. You click on that, and it's usually pretty quick, Tyler, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it is.
Safe to say it doesn't have any results from Cass County.
It does not, and it will not for a little while now.
Just a pile on. All right, we'll be back with more election night coverage right after this.
On country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees. Mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag. I miss you was written in a message in black. Thrown in a van 2,000 miles back. A better time. And how many souls and times that I've told, places that I'd wanna be. And how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat walking on a New York street. A pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet? But that's the truth. And 2 pictures buried in a guitar case. Underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls and times that I've told.
Welcome back to our election night coverage here on the Mighty 790 KFGO, your number 1 radio station in the Fargo-Moorhead and whole great big area that we serve. Tyler Axness with me, Joel Heitkamp, as is Amy Adler, Abby Miller, Madison Quinn, and J.J. Gordon just got back from West Acres. So we're here. The whole news team is here as well.
We're here, and actually, Joel, I want to encourage people that they can be a part of this conversation as well. You can call us. We have open phone lines at 237-594. You can text us at 35270. You can also comment on our YouTube feed, which is you can go to KFGO.com and click there. And I want to get this out because I just refreshed for some of the numbers here. This one comes out. I've never voted in my life. I'm 36. I only voted today because of the legalization of marijuana. Marijuana would give North Dakota more jobs, more money, and help with the booting out of drug dealers. I bring that up because, again, we talked about that potentially being a driving factor for more people. Now, if you're wondering what the latest is, I just did a quick refresh on the Secretary of State site, which you can also find at KFGO.com. Measure 2 with 72 precincts fully in. We're at 55-44. So that gap is narrowing on the no votes and the yes votes.
Okay.
I don't know where they came from, but the margin's narrowing.
A lot of races being called nationally, but the one that pertains to us the most is John Hoeven's race has been called. John Hoeven will be and continue to be United States Senator from the state of North Dakota.
Yes, that officially called from the Associated Press, and not surprised, perhaps a little surprised how early this was called. I thought perhaps with a 3-way race that maybe that would be enough of a variable, but apparently not.
Well,
the margins being so big for John.
And the one thing that I was surprised about was that the fact that Rick Becker so far hasn't gotten higher numbers than what he's gotten. I mean, if you look at how this is breaking out, I thought that Becker would get more as we went. Now, you can always call in, as Tyler said, 1-800-880-5346 on our Laney's News and Views studio line, or text us at 35270 on our iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. Let's go to the newsroom, and Paul Juergens, our news director.
We have the first Cass County numbers in now. First in the sheriff's race, Jesse Johnner, the incumbent seeking his second term, a wide lead over Matt King, the challenger. This is with just a small percentage of the votes in here, but Johnner, 17,037 votes, 83%. Matt King, 3383 for about 16.5%. Cass County Commission, close race at this point. Again, very early. Tony Grinberg with 9,643 votes to Ben Hansen's 9,590. And in the state's attorney's race, very close there with Ryan Youngren trailing, well, let's see here now. Yes, trailing Kim Hegvig by a little over 1,000 votes. Kim Hegvig, an assistant state's attorney. She's been in the office about 16 years at 10,263 votes, so about 53% of the vote. Ryan Youngren, the top criminal prosecutor in Birch Burdick's office, 9126 with about 47% of the vote. Again, these are partial numbers in from Cass County, many precincts to count, but Johnner and Hegvig leading in that race. And in the commission race, Ben Hansen just trailing Tony Grinberg by under 100 votes.
Wow.
The two surprises there for me, not the least of which was the Grinberg name, Hansen. Both of those two had been former legislators,
Correct.
but I didn't know it was going to be that close. I'm not going to lie to you.
You know what? One thing I did know that Ben Hansen's been out there busting his butt.
Very hard.
You know, he's been working very hard. Now, Tony Grinberg has had a lot of name recognition. He's had a lot of high priority jobs. I mean, he's with XL, he's with NDSES. If I recall, he was part of a commission not long ago either. So that name recognition.
He did get beat at the Fargo City Commission level.
You're right. You're right. He did. But still, even with all that said and done, with a 100-vote margin right now, that does surprise me.
Yeah.
Also, the state's attorney's race. I mean, with Youngren being out and as vocal as he's been, and you haven't heard much from him, but to have her on top surprised me, Joel.
There was two philosophies in that race, and I heard from two different groups. Number one, the attorneys out there felt that Youngren prosecuted cases through the courts too often, and they felt his record, he went to the courts when you didn't have to. So there was that sentiment out there from the lawyers. When you talk to law enforcement, they supported him because he did that. They wanted the full extent going into that prosecution, and then you start looking at the track record of success. Obviously, some high-profile successes, but some other numbers that didn't work out so good.
Well, and when you think about the narratives that have been used throughout this campaign and these closing arguments, crime, law, and order has been pounded here. So
that one is one that won't be settled until the last precinct comes in. I would guess. So, Jergy, give you some numbers there.
It's the numbers that he just read off, but it's again you got. Tony Grinberg, Ben Hansen, and neck and neck. The state's attorney's race is pretty neck and neck, and to no one's surprise that I know, Jesse John are running away with the Cass County Sheriff's race.
Okay, so as we know, Governor Aamodt reelected down in Texas. Also, Ron DeSantis was reelected by a huge margin in Georgia, and there is, in my personal opinion, a very, very strong leadership challenge now to Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and it's Ron DeSantis.
Well, and those punches are already getting thrown last night on some campaign trails here.
Yep, it's going to happen, and of course, we all know that in just a little bit, we're going to find out that the race has begun for President of the United States right after today happens. Rania Patrice is a friend. And she hails from Texas now. We've worked on some campaigns together. Rania, good to have you here with us on the Mighty 790.
Hey, always good to be with you.
Okay, let me ask you this. In Texas, any surprises there? I know the governor's race has been called for Governor Aamodt. You look at some of the numbers. I guess I thought it might be a little bit closer. Your take on that?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I thought it would be a little bit closer. Abbott has just, as a Texan, a native Texan, he's failed us time and time again. And I honestly don't think anybody works harder than Beto has, even when he wasn't holding office. So that's a little bit surprising. But at the end of the day, it's still Texas, and we have a lot of work to do. Obviously,
you have been connected nationally in so many ways to individuals around the country. What are you hearing in some of these high-profile races?
It's a lot, and nothing super shocking. It's going to all come down to who actually shows up. I think there's been a lot of pressure on the shoulders of young people all across the country. We're seeing in states where there was true investment in college campuses and just turning out young voters. We're kind of seeing the fruits of that labor, if I can say it that way. We hear a lot, unfortunately, on both sides of the aisle, quite frankly, that, young people don't vote, and so then those investments aren't made. But I think we're really, really kind of seeing that those investments pay off or have paid off in some of these states. I know it's in some places it's too early to call, but that's just important to keep in mind as we kind of watch these returns to continue to flow in.
Did the Democrats overplay their hand in some of these states, Rania, when it came to the issue of abortion?
I woman. I don't think the hand was overplayed. I do think there was too much stock put into it in some places, because honestly, that decision, the leak came down in the summer, and I think the theory that this was going to hold us through all the way to the end was just never going to be a winning strategy. It's important. It's massively important. It's still going to be important, quite frankly, as we even move past the midterm elections, but it wasn't going to be the only thing that was going to turn people out.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Rania, in terms of where you see the rest of the night going, because clearly there's going to be controversies out there in Nevada, in Georgia, in a lot of these red states where they won't allow early votes to be counted. And, of course, you're going to see some tight races where the individual is going to declare themselves the victor before all the votes come in. Are we basically seeing 2020 again, and we're going to hear a bunch of election deniers?
I unfortunately, I hate it, but I think so. It's really, really unfortunate. And quite frankly, I think we need to be teaching civics in schools again, because this is what happens when you don't know how the government works, how elections work. And so many of these states, the reasons that these votes aren't counted are because of Republican policies. So, it's one of those things. I do think we're going to see a lot of that again. It's very unfortunate because it is the process working as it's meant to, whether we like it or not. And it creates more misinformation, more disinformation. And I just don't think that's not what our country was founded on.
Okay.
We appreciate democracy here, and that means respecting the results of an election.
I couldn't agree with you more, but just be careful. They'll go into that civics lesson and somebody will yell critical race theory and it'll get thrown. Ronnie, it is so good to hear that voice. We'll speak again soon, okay?
Absolutely. Good to hear your voice.
Ronnie Patrice, ladies and gentlemen. AI, where are we at? We got to take a little break, or are we okay?
No, you're okay for a few minutes.
I just want to go through, and I'm looking at the Secretary of State's website, courtesy of KFGO.com, and some of what I'm seeing there so far. Some things bouncing here and there, but not a lot changing on some of these statewide votes.
No, and Joel, I've been going, and these are all partial, but it does look like some of the Cass County numbers are starting to partially come in until anything's fully. But if you're doing the whole refresh as though, or as like I am, you're going to be starting to see some numbers. So they are picking up speed in Cass, which I know we've got some spots that we're watching. But as far as statewide, I haven't seen anything really move either as of this point.
There's a story out there after this statewide race, which things were set up by Wayne Stenjum a long time ago to have the Attorney General's race be in the off year versus be in the on year. Remember when that all got changed out? Mm-hmm. And the intent clearly was to allow the Attorney General or whoever to run for governor without having to give up their post. And there's a lot of talk amongst the Republican faithful and loyal that Doug Goring is going to challenge. And, of course, his vote total, he would be declared the winner by any network right now. But that Doug Goring, the ag commissioner in the state of North Dakota, is going to challenge Doug Burgum to be that Republican spot on the ballot.
Well, there's a lot of rumors out there that Doug Burgum is just using this as the stepping stone as well. So, because there's been talks about other people maybe not wanting to, say, be in Congress much longer and run for governor as well. But that off year is situation. We've seen it time and time again. The previous Attorney General you bring up, doing that same thing. Then if you lose, you can just go back and get, into that comfortable position that you've been in before. That's news to me, Joel. I had not heard that name. I've heard about 3 other names getting thrown around, saying that they were going to be perhaps challenging Doug if he does stick around in the gubernatorial race next time. But
well, one of the races that everybody's following very closely, and of course we're going to get those results very late, is Kari Lake against Katie Hobbs down in Arizona running for governor. And of course that's been bouncing back and forth, and Lake being an election denier, and that has made her very popular with some. I can tell you who I don't think it's made her popular with is Kristi Noem.
Sure.
I think that Kari Lake, after she wins this race, which, my guess is she will, for governor of Arizona, will become the darling of a Donald Trump should he get that nomination.
Moving up into a VP spot.
Arizona is a swing state. It's a state that could go either way in a presidential race, and it's got way more electoral votes than what they have in South Dakota.
Well, and, Thune being declared winner by the Associated Press already down in South Dakota, I do believe. This race for the governor's office in South Dakota, I think, caught some on the Republican side by surprise with Jamie Smith, a member of the legislature down there, a Democrat, running as good of a race as he is. And, Kristi Noem barely eked by Billy Sutton last time. So I don't know that the popularity in the state of South Dakota for Kristi Noem is as much as what she would want you to believe it is.
No, I went down pheasant hunting in South Dakota, and the one thing that was crystal clear to me was that Republicans in South Dakota weren't 100% behind Kristi Noem. Now, some bad news that Abby Miller gave me. One student has been killed in a shooting at North Seattle High School. It goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on, Tyler.
Jesus.
Yeah, it never seems to end. Now, some of these high-profile races, I want you to keep in mind, because clearly the Herschel Walker, Senator Warnock race is going to go back and forth. Keep this in mind. If neither one of them gets to 50%, there will be a runoff in Georgia. And we'll be going through this another time. Now, the independent obviously won't be there, so somebody will get to 50% in the next race. But what you're seeing is Stacey Abrams running for governor on the Democratic ticket and getting nowhere near the percentage that Warnock is getting, which tells me that people are crossing over on that ballot.
Tyler. They are, yeah, and I think that's a testament to the type of candidate that they put up for the U.S. Senate on the Republican side in Herschel Walker. There was one thing that's going to be very telling to me of whether or not Herschel Walker wins is all the pounding on tables that, hey, I stand for this, here's my principles. That's all out the window. If you elect Herschel Walker, don't come and tell me that you're pro-life. Don't come and tell me that you're based on A, B, and C, and then go ahead and allow him to be United States Senator. Just tell us the truth that you just want the U.S. Senate and you want the power.
If you agree with what Tyler Axness just said, or if you disagree, give us a call, 1-800-880-5346. Join the conversation. We'd love to have you be part of our election night coverage here on the Mighty 790 KFGO. We'll be back with more right after this.
On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag, I miss you, was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back, a better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd wanna be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. walking on a New York street. A pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet? But that's the truth. And two pictures buried in a guitar case. Underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that had like to be. And how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. And all the days from now to then, if they never seem to come or to go, will find me in your memories that keep you from getting so low. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. Down the line, we'll meet up down the line. Down the line. On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag, I miss you, was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back, a better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd wanna be. And how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat, walking on a New York street. A pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet? But that's the truth. And 2 pictures buried in a guitar case. Underneath the music sheets all over the place, I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that had like to be. And how many days when I stay instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. And all the days from now to then, if they never seem to come or to go, find me in your memories that keep you from getting so low. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. Down the line, we'll meet up down the line. Down the line.
Here on the Mighty 790 KFGO. Let me set the table for you a little bit. Tyler Axness is with me. Joel Heitkamp. Amy Eiler is in the house. JJ Gordon. We got Madison Quinn and Abby Miller. So the whole team's here. Paulie Liance running. He's basically blocking for us here tonight. Anybody rushes, by God, he's got us, got our back. Now, when you look at what's happening over on the Minnesota side, in what has been a very contested, got really nasty Senate race between Rob Kupek and Dan Bomer. What we're looking at so far, early results coming in, Tyler, but Rob Kupek behind 47 to 52%.
Well, and I think there's only about 30% reporting right now, and that, and I would be, I would have to assume that is in fact the out part of District 4. You got the rural parts. I would imagine Moorhead's not included in that poll as of now.
Okay, so
just my gut anyway.
So, what are you seeing on the North Dakota legislative races? Because some of those are coming in pretty hot right now.
Yeah, and again, these are all partial. And the thing that I keep trying to remind myself of is that I think those early mail-in votes get dumped in after. So when we see these precincts coming in, if they're 14 of 14 or 4 of 4 and they're partially, I don't know if that's still including those early mail ballots. Now, if you can go to the Secretary of State site, which conveniently you can go do right at KFGO.com, we're seeing some of those results coming out. If you have a district you want to find out, text us at 35270. But just looking in the Cass County area, you know, we've got a new district in District 10, which is parts of, western and southern Fargo. The Democrats ahead on the state Senate side against Curtis Olafson. Steve Swantek and one of the Democrats are ahead there. But again, those are partially 3 of 3. So that you've seen it before in some of the races that either you've been a part of, Joel, or the ones that you've followed along. You think you go into that night that, okay, this is, you get these results 3 of 3 partially, you think it's over, and all of a sudden that dump comes into the mail ballots that get out. All of a sudden you might find yourself a winner. Well, so it's tough to give some of these numbers out not knowing. Right?
And for those individuals that are looking for, crossover type voting, District 25, we spoke to that earlier. Larry Lewick pulling way ahead of Jim Dutzenrod with 13 of 14 precincts reporting. And so Larry Lewick, it appears, is going to win and continue to hold that Senate seat. But if you look at the House race, Kathy Scraw coming in third so far with 13 of 14 reporting. Elisa Mitskog in the second position. Kathy Scraw 26%. Elisa Mitskog 31%. And Cindy Schreiber-Beck at 42%. It's really not a surprise on that House race down in my neck of the woods.
No. Well, and I think it shows just the way in which those two candidates were campaigning together as far as the Republican and Democrat, and that's why they are where they are finding themselves as of now. Now, back up here in the Cass County area, one of those races that I was following along was District 27. You got an incumbent in Kristen Roars on the Senate side. trailing currently. Now, again, partially, so keep in mind these can switch when you get those dumps of mail-in. But, I mean, these are races that are being decided by 40 votes right now.
Yeah.
There's some that are by 13 votes. That's how close some of these are. That's why when I hear that in just one polling place alone that 25 people walked away because of how long they had to wait, those could change these results.
Exactly. Think of how frustrating it must be for a race that close. You want to talk about somebody that's high-fiving with his group? Jared Hendrix, pro Measure 1, one of the individuals that led the charge for
Coast
term
to Coast
limits.
AM.
And I got to tell you, the term limit issue is doing quite well. Jared, good to have you on News and Views. It's looking more and more like congratulations is going to be in order.
Yeah, it looks like it so far. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I think that it's unlikely that, any results will come in that will change the momentum. So far, good news for us, that's for sure.
Is this a surprise to you that the gap is as wide as what it is?
No, it isn't. It's funny. Sometimes, I will admit, a few times in the last couple of weeks, I got a little discouraged at times. But, Joel, it's funny because, and we talked about this when I was on the radio the other day with you, but when you run in political circles around political people, your perspective can get skewed. And, I went out this weekend and I knocked on doors all weekend in Fargo. And when you go out and talk to regular people, you get a very different impression. So I had a much, stronger sense that we were going to be successful after doing that. But so, no, I'm not super surprised. Obviously we're coming in lower than what some of the polling showed us that, but that's to be expected. I mean, you had the opposition out there for a while, so that's to be expected.
Jared, Tyler Axness here, and I think you're spot on. And on the afternoons live here out at KFGO, when I would ask people this question, you had a number of people say, yeah, I'm for term limits. I could see maybe there's some issues with this one. I don't care. I'm voting for it. And when I got that repeatedly, time and time again from callers and texters, I figured this had to be a large margin that we're going to be expecting tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's, again, it's just people innately, voters are smart. They understand that, if they feel like the system doesn't represent them anymore, a lot of these arguments you get from political circles in Bismarck just don't hold any water, because people know that's ridiculous. When you have people out there saying you got to have decades of experience to understand government, I mean, people just laugh at that because it's absurd at its face.
Do you think this will catch a wave? I mean, more and more states obviously pushing term limits. Whenever the issue's put in front of people, it appears that it passes. I mean, do you see this as a trend that's going to happen, Jared, nationally?
Yeah, I think so, Joel. And I think it's, especially, and you guys cover politics, we live in a, arguably somewhat divisive era. But when you have an issue like this that has widespread cross-partisan support, I mean, those are the kinds of issues that really take off. And so, yes, I think it's going to continue. I think more states might start to look at this and really, push it on the ballots if applicable, and find other ways to get it in their laws. And of course, the big goal for most of us, I think I can speak for everybody in our sponsor committee, that we ultimately want term limits on members of Congress, which I think most people understand. It's even more important there when you get people that go off to D.C. getting paid six-figure salaries, full benefits. I mean, that's truly a full-time job for, sometimes 30, 40, 50 years. That's too much time.
Jared, do you regret at all with the numbers and the way it's looking? It's going to pass here in North Dakota that you didn't go for the full enchilada and throw in the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, all of those individuals into this as well?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say I regret that. You could make an argument that we should have included it. But I'll say this, that there's nothing more powerful than a convert. And I think once the legislature is term limited, as it looks like that's going to be the case, I think the best idea in the world would be for the legislature to take the action to term limit the other positions. And I think there's a good chance that might happen now.
Jared, I'm going to flip the switch on you here in the script a little, because is there any concern, and I'm not sure what the wiggle room is in the language of this measure, that the legislature gets together and tinkers with it in a way that provides a result that's not intended by the passage from this vote?
Yeah, we wrote it pretty airtight.
Okay.
As you probably know, it says that the legislature cannot affect this new article to the Constitution. It can only be affected by an initiative from the people. Sure. So I think they'd have a very hard time. I can't think of a legal avenue
with which they can do that. I will say that, there's been 21 states that have passed term limits for the legislature, and there's 15 that still have it. So there's 6 states that have repealed those term limits, but in every single one of those cases, those efforts came from the courts and from the legislatures. It never came from a vote of the people. So I think if there was an effort to challenge this legally, I think it'd be very unwise.
Jared, we'll probably touch base with you a little bit later, but it looks to me like you're going to be happy tonight. So appreciate you coming on and visiting with us.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. I want to get some numbers out from Richland County and the sheriff's race. This got pretty contentious down there. Jason Weber taking on Gary Rull for an open position as sheriff in Richland County. It appears that Gary Rull is going to win that with 13 of 13 reporting. Rull got 62% of the vote versus Weber's 37-38% of the vote.
For those of us that don't call that home, what was the contention?
Well, the contention that there were people that had served in the sheriff's department that had since retired that accused Gary Rull of some things that he said just simply weren't true. One involved a potential DUI of his daughter, some other things, and of course Jason Weber was involved in the Andrew Sadek case, and where he saw that shaking out, and there were some strong feelings down there. So it just was high profile in Richland County. It really was.
Well, and knowing that the controversies that happened there and some of the tragedies, it was discussed not only in Richland as far as some of the things you just brought up. So I'm not surprised. Are you surprised by the numbers where they sit right now?
I never saw it being that big a percentage, but I thought Rural was always going to win. In Ohio State Senate race, J.D. Vance pulling and continuing to pull ahead of Tim Ryan with 74% of the votes coming in.
Well, and that's where I'll be eating crow for this next few days, because I said if there's going to be, here's my wild prediction, that one that's not on a lot of people's radar was that race, and I thought it would be a lot closer than that.
Well, who knows what precincts are still left to come in, but, the gap is getting wider, 300,000 votes now. It's like a lot of things with this. After the precincts keep coming in the beginning, you can't say that they do necessarily tell you anything, but the longer it is, it's polling data. That's the way a race is breaking. No question about that.
Looking at some of the Cass County numbers, guys, what's really interesting is some of these county-wide races are really close. We go to the Cass County Commission between Tony Grinberg and Ben Hansen. We talked about it a little bit earlier. That gap is not widening. 10,696 votes for Tony Grinberg. Ben Hansen with 10,367 votes. That is a very close race. You go to Cass County State's Attorney, Kim Hegvik with 11,076 votes, Ryan Youngren with 10,172 votes. Some very close races there. You get down to Cass County Sheriff, and of course we've talked about this, but Jesse John are just running away with that win. He's got over 18,000 votes now, and Matt King hasn't even hit 4,000 at this hour. And so these are all partially for Cass County. It's not 0 out of 34 precincts reporting, so I don't know if we're seeing early vote numbers or what we're seeing, but there's not a full precinct in yet for Cass County. So these are still really early, but it's interesting how close some of these races are countywide.
If you look at the Georgia Senate race, another high-profile race that was out there, Herschel Walker pulling ahead in that race with, 49.3% of the vote. Senator Warnock with 48.8%. That's 73% of the votes cast. Now, I want everybody to remember this. In Georgia, which might be the seat that determines whether or not or who has control of the United States Senate, that's still out there. With what's going on in Georgia, they have to get to 50% of the vote. If they don't reach 50, there's going to be a runoff.
Imagine being a Georgia resident and having to do this all over again. I mean, you heard the people in this region just tired of the ads over and over. Millions upon millions of dollars poured into that state for people that don't even call it home.
Yeah, well, I will tell you this. For us in the selling advertising business, I wouldn't mind being in Georgia right now.
Yeah, it's all from perspective, I suppose.
Exactly. So some of these local races, one that we want to get out there, I know you had a number for, and I'm this big bias on my part, but Megan Edwardson was in a very, very tight race for that second seat.
And again, these are all partially here in Cass County, District 41. There is a 13-vote gap between Joran Johnson. So you got Michelle Strinnan as a top vote getter, the Republican. You've got, and she's an incumbent. Michelle Strinnan is incumbent. You got Joran Johnson, the new incoming Republican candidate. And second, Megan Edwardson in third and just trailing by 13 votes. Lillian Jones coming in fourth, some distance behind that.
So 2 points I want to make there. Number one, who knows if those absentee ballots have been counted, which, for the absentee ballots, I know that Megan worked very hard on getting people to vote absentee. The other thing I would add into that is something that Amy and you both said earlier, which is if people were being turned away from the opportunity to vote and you lose a race by 13 votes, that would make me rip my hair out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Going over to the Minnesota side for just a moment. Sorry, Tyler, if I'm interrupting you. I know that one of the races, of course, we were following very closely, and we heard a lot of chatter about it on KFGO through ads and otherwise, was the Dan Bomer and Rob Kupik race. And Rob Kupik is leading 53% right now to 46%. I mean, it's very close. 2,793 votes to 2,406 votes. So it's a very close race right now with 25 of 68 precincts reported right now. So it's still a long ways to go, but close.
And the tell in that race is going to be the precincts that come in. Moorhead will go Kupek and outstate, or certainly the rural area in that district leaning more for Boner. So, who knows? That got contested for Bomer. He struggled. In the end, the ads were nasty. But if he loses this race, if in fact he loses this race, I know he's going to blame media and a number of others. He had the police called to his house after those ads were run
last week.
So the sympathy isn't there from me in terms of how that all shook out.
Yeah, that was last week when that police call was made, and those ads. You've been in this game a lot longer, both in elected office, now also doing the talk show here on KFGO. In the short amount of time that I've had, I have not seen an ad as biting on such a local race than what that was. And that's not saying right, wrong, or otherwise, but boy, that was a punch that was thrown by the
That
DSO.
was as nasty of an ad as I've ever heard. I want to get to Tasha Carvel here. AI, you've got, she isn't ready with that yet. We'll try to get to some of that. I'm just going by some of my sound that I had. So that was sent to Paul.
Yeah, no, she is. Yep, we're going to get some of that sound. She is out at a Measure 2 get together, those pro Measure 2, and we'll have that sound from KFGO News coming up in just a little bit. But she is at that party. I think they're still optimistic, even though reporting right now on the measures, taking a look at them for you real quick, with 126 out of 398 precincts reporting, only 144 full precincts reporting. That's partial is 126. So we've got a lot to go. 61% yes for term limits, and in terms of the initiated measure, number 2 relating to the legalization of marijuana, 56% no, 43 yes.
That's tightening a little bit. That is. Abby Miller has some more information for us, too, on one of the legislative districts that we've been watching.
Yeah, District 27 State Representative Ruth Buffalo is in there now, and she is leading 29.14%. Thomas Kassler, also a Democrat, is right behind her with 23.94%. Greg Steeman is tied with him. He's a Republican, also at 23.94%. And then another Republican, John Christie, is in fourth at 22.97. So that's another really close race in Fargo.
Greg Steeman, a former member of the State Board of Higher Education.
Right.
So stick around. More coming with your election night coverage right here from KFGO, and go to KFGO.com.
On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag, I miss you, was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back, a better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd wanna be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat walking on a New York street, a pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet, but that's the truth. And 2 pictures buried in a guitar case, underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that had like to be.
Some of the legislative races coming in now. I'm glad you're still with us here on our KFGO election night coverage. Joel Heitkamp, Tyler Axness, Amy Eiler, J.J. Gordon, Madison Quinn, Abby Miller, and, of course, our whole news team is out there. We'll be visiting with Tasha Carvel from out in the field as well soon. But the legislative races you're seeing, Tyler?
I'm seeing a few of these races come in, and with the check mark, so that means on the Secretary of State side, precincts fully counted, 4 of 4. District 35, now that's Bismarck. This is former State Senator Aaron Oban's seat. Of course, she got appointed to the USDA Rural Development. Tracy Potter filled in, a former state senator. You served with Tracy Potter. Sean Cleary is declared the winner out there, 60% to 40%. I bring this up because, of course, watching this race from afar was the most expensive legislative race, I think, in the state. Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And the Democrats' only seat in Bismarck.
And the only seat, aside from up way north with Marvin Nelson and Richard Marcellet and those guys, only seat west of I-29.
Yeah.
So, I guess I don't know if I'm surprised that the race is that decisive, but 60-40 with how much money was poured in, even from a Democratic side, it tells a lot about where the state of the Democratic Party is right now.
And that's the seat that Aaron Oban held, and that Aaron Oban took the position with rural development in North Dakota with the Biden administration. So
someone is texting into 35270, and you can join the conversation at our iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club at 35270. You can also call in. We're live on the air and ready to take your calls at 237-5948, 800-880-5346. Someone texted in and said, please continue to give Minnesota updates, and we will do that. They wanted to know about the Michelle Fischbach, that some national news outlets are calling that race. It would be pretty easy to call that race, even though they only have, they don't have a full result in, but Michelle Fischbach is leading right now with 63% of the vote. So hard not to call that one at that point. I think that's a pretty easy call.
I also don't think that race surprises anyone.
No.
I think the race to watch in Minnesota is clearly the governor's race and the attorney general's race.
Well, and predictions here, I think that what we heard from Bill Werner is pretty accurate. I don't know that Keith Ellison wins re-election.
Yeah, well,
really
he was
don't.
way behind in the polls going into Election Day. And, of course, we saw what happened in Minneapolis. And if you were in charge of law and order, there were people upset about some of the rioting that happened. Well, a lot of people upset about the rioting that happened in Minneapolis. And so if, in fact, he doesn't hold his seat, that's going to be part of it. Amy?
Checking out some of those statewide races for Minnesota.
Coast to Coast AM.
And sorry about that. Coast to Coast AM will play after we get off the air. So don't worry for all of you wondering where your Coast to Coast.
Yeah. Goblins, ghouls, and aliens will be up later.
Some of those statewide results in Minnesota for Attorney General. Keith Ellison is leading with almost 66% of the vote at this hour. The governor's race looks like Tim Walz has a heavy lead at almost 68% now. And that's 24 out of 87 reporting there.
That tells you the metro is coming in.
Yeah, exactly. You look at, let's see, what else? Governor, we've got Attorney General, Secretary of State is one that people were watching. That's, Steve Simon, the incumbent, has almost 70% of the vote right now.
Wow. Okay.
So,
anybody got an update on Kupek? And
I sure can look. I've been following that race as well.
I've actually got it pulled up right now, and nothing. Oh, in fact, it
51
has
to
changed.
48,
51-48, just a refresh here. So, and that is with about 38% precincts reporting right now.
Okay, so there's a long way to go on that race as well. And there's going to be a big change in that district. You're sitting there with out Keith Ellison coming in. You've lost not Keith Ellison,
Kent
but
Eakin
Kent Eakin. Paul Marquardt has been a long time leader in the legislature, as has Kent. And so
you think about the budgets that Paul Marquardt's been a part of, and just the educational impact he's had,
and the leadership he's provided. Yeah. You're talking about a man that generations now he's educated about civics and taught in school at Dilworth and coached. He's an old wrestler. You don't mess with him. I can tell you that. And so, I think at times, no matter what party they're from, you should take a step back and appreciate all that they did by the time they stepped aside.
Yeah, and the amount of hours that's spent away from family, the amount of time you're putting in to give back to the community. I think too often it's probably gone not thanked. You think about, we're passing term limits right now, saying get back here. But you look at some of those stewards that have been out there for the right reasons, and when they decide it's time to go, I mean, it's a loss for the community.
We'll have Abby check on this, but Lauren Bolbert, the gun-toting, husband who, that's a whole nother issue. In Colorado, the congresswoman is losing so far in Colorado.
Didn't she lose? She had a restaurant, right? Wasn't that part of it? Did that get closed down? Weren't people getting sick when they ate there?
Yes. That was another one of the big issues. But, in fairness to that group of people that would be disappointed if she lost, Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to win big.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what? If and likely when the Republicans control the House, she's going to have a leadership position.
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind that they'll give her some form of leadership.
Well, what needs to happen, and I realize term limits are probably going to win. Probably is my disclaimer. They're going to win here in North Dakota. But if you really want to affect change, you look at some of what individuals have on both sides of the aisle, where really what's decided on who's going to be the next member of Congress is decided in the primary. And so if you want to fix a lot of what happens in Congress, instead of term limits, get an independent commission to draw the districts.
Couldn't agree more. You get that or open primaries, whatever it is. You can't be having politicians draw and pick their voters.
No. I mean, and that's what they do. That's
is.
Exactly what's happening now, and it's just incredibly frustrating. Also want to let you know that you can watch everything we're doing here tonight on YouTube, and just go to KFGO.com and you'll connect there. And we thank you for that because, people, when you and I and others say, we're number one, that doesn't mean we can't check out the competition and see that their wives are watching, and that's it. We've got a couple more people watching here, to say the least.
You can watch us do radio here as we click refresh.
So some of the numbers you have, Amy, I can tell by your eyes.
No, I was just looking at these Cass County numbers. It's interesting that, Caramond only with 38% of the vote on a statewide level, but winning Cass County, she's winning at Cass County, which is just, I think, is interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that.
It's early, but she's got 19,000 votes to Kelly Armstrong's 16,000. Now, statewide, it doesn't look like she's got a fighting chance with only 38% of the vote. It's just interesting as the precincts roll in for Cass County that she continues to keep a lead.
Caramond got into this race late, in fact, so late that she couldn't even hire staff. She didn't have the money, number one, but number two, what she didn't have was she didn't have the type of staff that could get out there. So she's driving all over the state with signs in the trunk of her car saying, hey, please, can you help?
And there was that. You can't do it all. And I think that was a point of pride as well, saying, look, I'm doing this on my own, which I think a lot of people can respect. But to win races, you have to raise money and you have to have a team around you to get the work done.
Okay, I'm going to tie in with Josh Boschee, the minority leader in the North Dakota House, for some comments on some of the key races he's watching. Josh, congratulations as well. But what are you seeing statewide with some of your candidates?
Hey, Joel and Tyler, good to be on. We're seeing some signs of hope. We're pleasantly surprised. A lot of still early numbers coming in, and specifically Grand Forks County and Cass County, but our candidates are outperforming what we thought, and so we're excited. We'll see what those final votes come in the next hour, but looking good when you think up in District 43, looking at District 10 down here in Fargo, and then your guys' very own former staffer Megan Edwardston. I mean, we're pleased to see where she's trying to stay on the heels of Pam Anderson and keep that seat.
No.
Okay, go
Josh,
ahead.
just a quick question. I'll let Joel do a follow-up. These are all partially numbers. So just to be clear, that we're still waiting on those early mail-in ballots, correct?
I don't know that formula. Everyone has their own, their own thought of what's what. So.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out, where the partial and not the full is, and that's my gut. But okay, I'll allow that as an answer, and I'll let Joel take
Josh,
over.
I want to ask you this. We're seeing some very, very tight races, Megan's being one of them, where she's just a couple votes behind that second spot when it comes to the North Dakota House. We heard report after report from our people out in the field that, the voters got turned away, that things were so backed up. I mean, how frustrated
are you? Or they turned away themselves because they had waited so long and they couldn't stand in the line anymore.
How frustrating is that for you on some of these close races to know that some of those voters could have been waiting to vote for your candidates?
Very much so. And regardless of who's on the ballot, everyone should be frustrated by that. We're the largest county in the state. We have resources to run these elections. And what I continued to hear and was calling the auditor's office about was running out of paper ballots. I voted at the Civic Center. Civic Center is in 4401, that precinct, and that was the ballot they kept running out of. It's like, how do you run out of the ballot in the home precinct of which the voting location is located? And then they would say to people, well, you can go vote the express vote, which is a great convenience for folks, but there's a lot of people who are skeptical of, some of the electronic voting. So people wanted a paper ballot. They wanted to make sure that it was registered. There's still a lot of work the Cass County Auditor's Office has to do. We saw this in the primary, too, where there was people turned away because of the acts of the poll workers. My understanding is they improved training, got that taken care of, but it sounds like now it was the basics of voting. They didn't have ballots available.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, when you potentially lose a race by 13 votes and you hear of a number of people that either got sick of it or were turned away, that's pretty frustrating.
Very much so. And again, in the state's most populous county, we have staff, we have these resources. Especially when you looked at last week, any of us that were looking at the Secretary of State numbers, we had 10,000 less early votes than we had in 2018. So one would assume either less people are voting or everyone's showing up on Election Day. And I guess you should prepare for everybody.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, Joel, Josh will be following along and doing the same as I'm sure many of your candidates are. They're just clicking refresh here. I do, and I know in District 9, which is up in the north central part, where we've got District 9A, 9B. Some of the results coming in that are quite interesting. It does look like Jamie Davis, your Democratic MPL candidate, is going to win. This is according to Secretary of State's website, District 9A, but a long-time Democratic MPL representative and Marvin Nelson looks to be coming up short in District 9B. Have you heard anything about the potential lawsuit that is pending on this sub-district?
Nothing specific about the lawsuit other than, we've been reached out by legislative counsel to hold on to all our documents and be prepared for a court case.
Okay. I want to get to Amy Adler, and thank you, Josh. I appreciate it. Hang in there. I don't know if you have any more results for us coming in on the Minnesota side.
Nothing more has come in. Actually, I just refreshed the Minnesota numbers, and nothing more is coming in. I know that Tasha Carvel from our KFGO news team is out and about. She's actually waiting in line to talk to Rob Kupik now, who is from the DFL and running against that Dan Bomer, a race that we've been following quite closely for his state senator in District 4. She hopes to talk to him within the next few minutes. He still is in the lead at 51%, but that's a close race there. He's got about 3,100 votes to 2,900 votes against the Republican.
And that race had a lot of money, Tyler, spent on it, because that one could control the Minnesota Senate.
It could.
Al Aamodt, longtime journalist in this community, but also about as civic-minded as you can be, one of the election workers. You can say volunteering your time because I know what they get paid, which is next to nothing. Al, good to have you on. What did you see out there, Al? There's a lot of reports coming into us about people frustrated in terms of the lines, in terms of not being able to vote, and some other things.
I was at the precinct in West Fargo, the Hartle building, and we were swamped. And when I tell you this, Joel, I'm not kidding you. I started at 5:30 this morning, and I never sat down until it must have been around 8 o'clock tonight. And that's no bull. That's the truth. We were just swamped. And the really funny thing is, to me, and I worked the 2020 presidential election, and we had way more voters, or at least it seemed like way more voters for this election on election day than we had on the 2020 presidential election. On the other hand, early voting, and Josh was talking about that a little bit earlier, our early voting numbers were very, very marginal. It was just not a big deal.
Well, Al, here's what has so many people frustrated as they come in, whether it's by text or by phone or however they're reaching out to us. Paper ballots they ran out of. They had to go to express voting. They had to wait in line for as long as 2 hours. They got there a little bit before 7, weren't deemed to be in line, and told go home. You can't vote. I mean, there's a real frustration here, Al.
We had a lot of people in line, but you know how the law is written. You got to cut. If you're not in the door or not in line by 7 o'clock, you can't vote. I was told that there were some that came afterwards, maybe a handful. And that's about it. So we didn't have that. We never had lines as long as they had at West Acres. We had some people come over to the Hartle office building that said that the voting at West Acres was incredible. We had lines. We moved them as quickly as we could. We too ran out of ballots, and most people were pretty good though. In going with the express voting system.
Al, Tyler Axness here. You've worked a lot of these elections, and one thing that we keep bouncing off here is either getting people to have that application sent to them to vote by mail, or increase the number of polling places like we used to have. I'm curious, you as somebody who works, has to process these people through that line to make sure their vote counts. Would you prefer more polling places and going back to the way it was?
Well, I don't know. I honestly think North Dakota has done a pretty good job in providing voter access. And like I told you, we had 5 days that we were open for early voting, and our numbers were very so-so. I think that there was a fair amount of opportunity. I was surprised by the fact we didn't vote on Saturday, and during the presidential election of 2020, we had 2 weeks of early voting. So, and I'm making an assumption here, and that's all that it is an assumption that maybe the powers that be that figured, well, it's not a presidential election, it's an off-year race, there won't be that many voters. I don't know. But I'll tell you this. This is just my two cents, and has nothing, not on a basis of fact. I think that pot issue really drove voters, or brought voters out, and at least from what I was seeing. And I'll be honest with you, there were a lot of people that voted that I worked with, and I worked with a hell of a lot of them that smelled like pot, and I think that's what they were going to do. I'm not kidding you.
They thought it had already passed.
Well, I know what it smells like. I never inhaled.
Al, I want to read this text. I want to read this text to you. Send this heartfelt thanks to all the polling workers continuing to put in the hours and dedication, despite some of the turmoil that's been out there about that type of work.
Yeah, and we've gotten report after report like that, Al. So on behalf of everybody here in the KFGO election coverage, thank you for doing what you did, and tell your fellow workers the same.
We're headed over to the courthouse right now because you know how the chain of custody thing goes. But I got to tell you, when they called me and asked me if I'd work, I said they wanted me to be an election judge or an inspector in Horace, and I said no. I said I want to be an election judge and I want to work with Mary Sinner. I worked with Mary during the presidential race. There is nobody who runs the show like she does. She knows, and I'm not kidding you either. She's just a gem.
Okay. Thank you, Al. Always good to talk to you, buddy. I want to tie in. Apparently, we have Rob Kupek on, who is still in a very, very tight race for that Minnesota State Senate seat. Rob, good to have you on with us on our election night coverage. Tell me something that we don't know. We're tracking these numbers as close as what we can.
Tell you something you don't know? I don't know.
I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here looking. I'm looking at numbers that have you at about 55%, and of course your opponent Dan Bomer at 43. Now, I guess what I'm getting at, Rob, is what's in, what isn't in. Is the Moorhead vote in? Is the rural vote in? I think we both know that it can severely affect these numbers on whether or not they're rural or urban.
Sure. I only got a cursory glance at it, but it looked like it's kind of an even split. So it had been a little bit closer before, and then a chunk of some Moorhead numbers did come in. So it did take a little jump up there. So how much of what is exactly in, I have not actually had time to look at the breakdown yet.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do, Rob, here. And, I'm looking at about 54% of that vote being accounted for here. This is your first time on the ballot. Tell me about the way the feeling is right now, that uncertainty. How are you doing as a first-time candidate?
I was doing really good up until about 6:30 tonight, when I got to the point of now, I worked all day on things. We were campaigning all day, and then I'm like, well, now it's kind of like there's nothing to do. So then it's, but luckily, it's the one thing. Television helps you prepare for this when you work on TV. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. So I felt like this is hurry up, and now I'm in the wait.
Well, and there's a lot of people waiting along with us here on KFGO that are following your race very closely.
Yep, and we'll stay in touch, Rob. We need more another day, so make sure you have information we don't know. Okay, Rob?
Okay.
Right, Rob.
Well, that's credit to you guys, how on top of it you are. You don't know any more than me.
Rob Kupek, ladies and gentlemen. Richard Marcellet, longtime state senator in North Dakota, goes down. The Jim Dutzenrod loses his race against Larry Luick. The story of the night from a good friend, Jamie Selzer, who texted me this, said that it looks like Democrats could hold as few as 4 to 5 seats in the Senate, having lost Richard Marcellet, having lost Aaron Oban. I don't know what else is out there, but obviously Joel Heitkamp being districted out. Yep. And so it is going to be basically one party rule with a super majority.
Yeah, you're thinking about a Kathy Hogan that is going to get reelected in District 21. You're thinking about Tim Mathern in District 11 that ran unopposed. It does look like here, as I'm refreshing some in our area, District 27, Kristen Roars will be reelected. Terry Wanzik, of course, will be holding that seat over Ben Vig. another new district. That's, in fact, the district that I believe that Joel Heitkamp got district out. But, yeah, that Aaron Oldman seat being gone, I'm trying to catch up to some of these other Senate spots out here. And it does appear, and this does look as though it's official on the Secretary of State's website, District 43, Joel Boschee, going to be, she's losing to Jeff Barta, a Republican up in Grand Forks.
Yeah.
So that's another loss.
And Amy
Let's,
Otter's
yeah, let's. I have some more from around the Fargo area, but Paul Jurgens from our KFGO news team.
Democrat Katrina Christensen says she may not be done running for public office. The University of Jamestown College professor lost in a three-way race today against Senator Hoeven and independent Rick Becker of Bismarck. There was only one debate in the race. Hoeven's campaign raised more than $4 million. That was compared to Becker's roughly $550,000 and Christensen's $92,000. Again, Katrina Christensen saying she may not be done with public office in North Dakota and may run again.
Okay. Thanks, Paul Jurgens. Also, looking at District 10, we've talked about that here. That's a new district in South Fargo. And it looks like the the Democratic candidate for Senate, Ryan Braunberger, in the lead right now against Curtis Olafson. Steve Swantek, the Republican, though, from the state representative side, is leading the Democratic candidates quite significantly with 1,200 votes. The closest leader, 963 votes right now.
In that District 27 race with 3 of 3 reporting, you've got Greg Steeman and Josh Christie now that everything's in, winning those 2 seats. Ruth Ann Buffalo losing, as well as Thomas Kassler losing those seats. So that's how quickly things can switch around.
Because it was not more than 20 minutes ago that the opposites had been there, that it looks like it was, in fact, could be Democrats taking that district and sweeping. But as we do continue to click that old refresh and those numbers keep coming in, just waiting for that check mark to be that official statement here.
And the gap getting wider between Megan Edwardson and Jordan James Johnson. So Megan now is losing that race by 400 votes. So that's with 2 of 2 in. So it's looking like my Megan isn't going to make it to the State House is what it's looking more and more like. So we'll continue with our coverage. We'll focus nationally on some of these races as well. It's almost dead even in Georgia. There's a whole lot more to report. Stick around. More coming your way. Right here on KFGO.
On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees. Mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag. I miss you was written in a message in black. Thrown in a van 2,000 miles back. A better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd want to be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat walking on a New York street, a pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet, but that's the truth. And 2 pictures buried in a guitar case, a underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls.
Welcome back to our election night coverage. Let me just tell you, it's great working with this wonderful team. The whole news team is out there. I'm Joel Heitkamp, Tyler Axness, J.J. Gordon, Amy Adler, Abby Miller, Madison Quinn, all sitting here right now. Tyler, what do you have for me?
Well, I'm just doing the old refresh here on the Secretary of State on the Minnesota side. You can catch all that at KFGO.com. It's one click away. You can also be watching us at KFGO.com. But about 70% of the precincts reported in District 4. We've been following it. Just had Rob Kupek on. That margin is about 54% to 46%. Rob Kupek's still in the lead. Unless something dramatically shifts, it does look like Rob Kupek's going to hold on to the lead.
Well, when I asked him just a little bit ago whether or not that was urban-rural, and he said it's about evenly split, that told me that the lead is okay in terms of Rob's point of view.
Yeah, that was the impression I got as well. So that's the latest there. I know that the gubernatorial race between Governor Walz, Scott Jensen, still sounds as though Governor Walz has got quite a substantial lead. I'm getting some head nods there. So that being where it is, one thing that we don't know was that the metro area that voted for Governor Walz so far? Is that what's been reported or not?
So what are we seeing in terms of the Keith Ellison race?
That was, I did, and he was leading quite significantly at one time. Let me pull it up here again. And that, I mean, Keith Ellison still leading at 60%. I would call it 60% to 39 right now. Of course, that's 40 of 87, but that's a pretty significant lead with 60% for Keith Ellison. Someone in, did you have another Minnesota race?
No, I would say that tells me it is the cities, the metro area that probably has those just by that margin.
Someone in our text club at 35270 says, who in the auditor's office decided that Cass County...
I don't know if we're on there, AI. We'll try to see what's going on to us online. You might be able to catch us, but I think we'll just talk right through this and keep going. Let me just point out that some of the races that we're looking at, on a national scale, we've got Katie Hobbs in Arizona. Katie Hobbs in Arizona, she's the Democratic candidate that actually refused to debate Tyler Carrie Lake. And again, who knows where these precincts are? And who knows whether or not these individuals that are collecting these votes are more metro or rural. Right. But as of 47% of the vote, Katie Hobbs is leading with 57%.
Well, and that's when we're talking about potential national implications when we think about the next presidential race as well. And one thing that she should have debated, but I don't know with the way of which that it's Carrie Lake, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that when she's already out denying the results and how this is going to pan out in the days ahead either.
Yeah. Well, and that's, she was an election denier in the beginning. Want to give you some of the other totals. Tim Ryan, and here's my bias. I was really hoping to see great things tonight in terms of the Tim Ryan race, but Tim Ryan, with 84% of the vote, is sitting at 46. J.D. Vance at 54. I don't think that that's surprising to people, but to me, disappointing. I'm not
very because you know what? Let's stop there for a second, though, Joe, because Tim Ryan has that model that I think you and I, that's what we feel as the Democratic Party should be running on, and to see that being the results, disappointing for a larger scale.
In the Colorado District 3 race, with 68% of the voters reporting. Adam Frisch, the Democrat, leading Lauren Boebert, the gun-toting congresswoman, with 52 to 48%. But again, when the race is that close, you have no idea what you're going to wake up to tomorrow.
No idea. And that's tomorrow, the day after, a week from now. And that's where I want people that are watching at KFGO.com to remember that this doesn't just overnight. These are the results. She's got to get certified. And with those mail-in ballots in some of these states, depending on what their laws are, we don't know when, in fact, they will be certified.
Okay, one other thing to add to it, Herschel Walker doing much better in his race to be a United States Senator than what he did as a Minnesota Viking. Herschel Walker with 49%, a little bit plus, 49.4. Reverend Warnock has 48.6% of the vote. Reminding people again, they've got to get to 50 or there's a runoff there.
There's going to be a runoff, and we'll be doing this all over again, and then we'll be trying to figure out, because we're talking about potential leadership in the United States Senate and control.
Okay, in the Georgia governor's race, Brian Kemp with 54% of the vote to Stacey Abrams' 45%. What the tell there for me is, Tyler, is the fact that you've got a situation where you can see what Reverend Warnock has at 48, Stacey Abrams at 45 with those same precincts out there, which tells me that, you know, Stacey Abrams is going to have a long night.
Yeah, you're going to have a long night, and what's with all the organization that she did for the last elections, like you'd think that maybe that did, in fact, pick her up a little bit as far as getting that foundation built up to have a good solid run, and then that not being the case at all tonight, I think is kind of surprising to me.
Okay, has anybody been checking the Measure 2 numbers? Because if I'm seeing it right, with 128%, 128 precincts out of 398, it shows that the legalization for recreational marijuana is behind 54% or 45 to 54.
Yeah, that's the numbers I've got as well right now, and still doable. It's a long shot, Joel. This one's the biggest surprise for me as far as statewide goes.
Yep,
it really is.
It is for me too. I guess I'm just sitting there waiting to see. I wish I knew what those precincts were, because if those precincts don't include the ones that are reporting Grand Forks and Fargo and Wahpeton, then those precincts really don't, everybody knows, just simply looking by the North Dakota State Senate, that it's very, very conservative once you get west of,
I-29.
I-29. That if it's going to pass, it's going to need votes in the Red River Valley to do that.
Yeah, well, and again, when we're looking at continuing to refresh the Red River Valley vote totals here just on the legislative side, I mean, the margin's going further and further on the right side. Now, I think there's obviously a lot of crossover. One of those, once you get in that ballot, I don't care if you do it at your house or not, it's showing, but not at the margins at all that I thought it would be. I thought it was a slam dunk. I thought the second it got on the ballot that North Dakota would, because if South Dakota could, before Kristi Noem stepped in with her highway patrol after the last measure down there, that North Dakota would. But
okay,
I'm 0 for 2, Joel.
The final results in on District 25 with 14 of 14 precincts reporting. Elisa Mitzkog did hold that other seat. Cindy Schreiber-Beck, the top vote getter, with 3,971 votes. Elisa Mitzkog getting 2,795. Now, here's what happened, though, in the end on that. Kathy Skra pulled a lot closer with 2,718 votes. So basically, the difference between Mitzkog and Skra was one had 29.39, one had 28.58. Now, we're talking about what here? We're talking about there's no automatic recount in this.
No.
And so it's done.
Even if Kathy Skra wants to demand something, do any less,
she
it's
can.
over. Yeah,
she can.
You can ask a recount.
Right, but it doesn't mean that it's, that's a lot of votes to win in a recount. That's a lot of votes to have thrown out or this, that, or another thing in a recount. Now, some of those county commission races that are out there, has anybody checked on Terry Gerger and saw, I shouldn't say Terry Gerger, checked on where we're at in terms of Cass County here?
No, I can do a couple of clicks and be right there.
You pull that up, and I'll
Yes.
report in Richland County. Incumbent Sid Berg losing Terry Gerger, the top vote getter, with 29.61% of the vote. Nathan Burseth, the second one, with 26.77%, and Raleigh Ellert with 23.87% of the vote. Sid Berg, 19.24%. So two incumbents in Burseth and Ellert, and a newcomer, Terry Gerger, known throughout Richland County. Terry there isn't too many places Terry goes where he's not known, being the top vote getter, finding himself on the Richland County Commission.
Here in Cass County, Joel, Tony Grinberg, Ben Hansen, still such a tight race. We got Tony Grinberg at 50%. We've got Ben Hansen at 49% of the vote. So you've got just about 700 votes separating those two of Tony Grinberg, Ben Hansen. We go down to the state's attorney, Kim Hegvig, still in the lead, 50% to 49. I mean, both the Cass County race with Tony Grinberg, Ben Hansen, it's a 1-point race, and same with the state's attorney here. It's a 1-point race. I mean, these are being decided by a handful of votes right now.
Yeah. Somebody wanted to know who in the auditor's office decided that Cass County ends at Castleton. Western Cass residents want names.
That's going to be one of the biggest stories that comes out of election night 2022, especially if you live in Cass County. The voting debacle will be the story that we talk about for the next weeks, months, and let's be honest, years. When the next time it is to go to the ballot box, we're all going to be thinking, and we're all the eyes are going to be on the Cass County office to make sure that the next election goes a lot smoother
to show that
than this
Amy
one.
Eiler is spot on right. Okay, let me read through a couple text messages here. Number one, Joel. Send a heartfelt thanks to all those poll workers going out there, all the hours and dedication. But somebody said, when did we decide to get rid of neighborhood polling places? Joel, not being able to vote is criminal. Call it what it is. Another one. Who in the auditor's office? So I said that one in Castleton.
There's one you're skipping over, but there's a word we can't use. There's the passion.
An S word that ends with a T. There's one. Who gives a blank when they come to vote? Let them vote, for God's sake. Tell you what.
Not going to find any argument here.
Yeah.
I love this text message who did the math. They have the receipts. Are you ready for this?
Yes. Hit us with it.
Okay. According to the North Dakota Secretary of State website, there are 131,950 eligible voters in Cass County. With 11 total voting sites, that's an average of 11,995 per site. 2008 general election turnout in Cass County was 56.65% of eligible voters. Using that turnout for this election, that's 6,795 people per site. Polls opened 7 to 7. That's 566 per hour per site. 9.5 voters per minute per site. So if Cass County did the math, they were expecting 9.5 voters per minute per site. If each site gets an equal number of voters, and as we know, metro sites will see higher numbers than rural, and 9.5 voters per minute, unconscionable, this person says. And yeah, to that it is. You're thinking about 10, and that is if everyone goes at an equal time and is spread out evenly, which we know doesn't happen on election day. So if Cass County Auditor's Office is mathing their math, like this text messenger is at 35270.
God bless this.
Yes.
Bless the math that's happening.
The person you want to sit next to in
exactly.
math class right there.
So if they are breaking down the statistics, when did they think this was a good idea? When did they think this was going to work?
I'm trying to find out who's going to defend this. I really am, because I'm sorry, but if I'm that voter that lost by a handful of votes here, and as you pointed out, there's two incredibly close races, one for the county commission and one for state's attorney.
Yeah.
Imagine if you weren't able to vote for that candidate. I mean, and listen, folks, I know many of you are sitting there screaming at your radio or at your dash saying they had a chance. Why didn't they early vote? Not everybody does that. You still should be able to vote on election day.
And if it is the case that in order to get our votes in, they need a certain number of people to early vote, then they need a campaign to say that to the voters, because the voters are not aware and they don't know that.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Texas governor's race called at 63% reported. Greg Abbott beating Beto O'Rourke with a huge win, 55% of the vote down in Texas.
55.
55, and it continues to widen. So the Georgia race, there's the Fetterman race, though, it appears to be, and I stress appears to be because you don't know what precincts are coming in yet, but I think that he's surprising some people in continuing his lead against Dr. Oz.
And now, again, Pennsylvania, one of those states, let me pull up because every state has their own laws. Pennsylvania has one as far as those early vote by mail. You can't start counting those until during Election Day. Yeah. So, again, when we think about, okay, you're going to have the results of Election Day now in Pennsylvania, you're not going to have the full picture until they count those mail-in ballots, and that's going to be not for probably a couple days.
Yeah, which, again, it's the Pennsylvania legislature that decided they couldn't count them prior to it. What do you have for me, Aaron?
We're going to take a quick break here. Okay. We're going to touch base with our CBS News here. We're going to get some national news updates, and then we're going to come back with more here. This is Election Night coverage. Joel Heitkamp, Tyler Axness, Abby Miller, Madison Quinn, JJ Gordon, Paulie Lines, myself, Amy Eiler, and our news team, Ryan Janke, Tasha Carvel, and Paul Juergens, all on duty here, live from our KFGO studios.
On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag, I miss you, was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back, a better time. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd wanna be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat walking on a New York street, a pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet, but that's the truth. And 2 pictures buried in a guitar case, underneath the music sheets all over the place. I caught a glimpse of the sweetest girl's face I ever knew. And how many souls and times that I've told of places that had like to be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. And all the days from now to then, if they never seem to come or to go, will find me in your memories that keep you from getting so low. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. Down the line. meet up down the line. Down the line. On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag. I miss you was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back. A better time. And how many souls and times that I've told, places that I'd wanna be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time, I'll meet you down the line. A long coat walking on a New York street, a pack of crushed cigarettes that fell to her feet. Well, ain't it odd how some people meet, but that's the truth. And 2 pictures buried in a guitar case, underneath the music sheets all over.
Okay, it's the last run for us, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go around the table here, and we're going to get some information to you before we shut down our coverage here on KFGO of election night. Let me throw some numbers at you with the percentages. Arizona governor's race, 47% reported. Katie Hobbs ahead with 56.9% of the vote. Carrie Lake, 43%. Michigan governor's race, Whitmer wins with 30% reported, and she has 52% of the vote over Dixon. Now, Georgia governors, Brian Kemp leading Stacey Abrams with a wide percentage there, 54 to 45. Pennsylvania Senate race, Fetterman leading Oz with 49% to 48% in that race. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance leading with 54 over Tim Ryan, 46. Georgia Senate race, Walker leading barely with 49.3. Reverend Warnock with 48.7. Colorado, another interesting one here. Lauren Boebert, the congresswoman, high profile, losing or with 69% of the vote behind in that race. Tyler, you got anything you want to share with people?
One of the big surprises that I've got, Measure 2 is going to lose in North Dakota. Measure 2 is going to lose. Right now we're at 45-55.
Measure 2 is going to lose.
I am surprised.
I am shocked. I really am. I am shocked by that.
Yep, I would have lost some money on that one.
Yeah, I would have too. You know, and Tyler, you were saying it earlier. Will we be the first state to put this on the ballot twice and not have it pass?
No, we didn't have recreational on the ballot before.
Oh, yeah.
We had they didn't allow it on the ballot before.
But people that backed this one successfully got it prevented from getting. I think you're right as well.
Yeah.
But because of the effect of no vote, essentially by saying, "Hey, don't sign this thing." I mean that's
right.
In essence a campaign.
I absolutely positively know what Amy Eiler's story of tonight is, which is
Cass
County.
Cass County voted Caramond.
Well, I didn't think that was going to be your story.
That's
You've been
my story.
Mad at the auditor's office all night. I thought.
Oh yeah, no, that is. But this is actually my story. Is breaking down the Caramond vote. At the beginning of the night, Tyler Axness said if Caramond pulls 40%, she won it. She's at about the high 30s right now, And what I think is interesting is when you break down districts individually in Cass County, how they are breaking down and how Aamodt is taking them, not by big amounts, but this independent candidate who came in late to the race made some really big waves. And she's not going to win this race, but it is interesting what she was able to do with this campaign.
It's not a good night for Kevin Kramer when it comes to Aamodt.
No,
it's not.
No.
JJ Gordon, step up to that mic. Give me one thought from tonight's races.
Yeah, I'll tell you about the thing I talked about the most leading into this election, which is people at diners, my wife and I in the car, in-laws, was Measure 1, right? And I think people had some real opinions. I didn't know people had as many opinions on term limits as they really did. I went in there knowing what I was going to vote, but I flip-flopped maybe 3 or 4 times during the whole, campaign for this thing. And I know that it's not done yet, but I mean, looking at numbers like 63% to 36 in favor of, it's gonna pass, and I'm pretty jazzed about that.
I can tell you, as somebody who flipped and flopped as much as anybody possibly could, it doesn't break my heart to see it pass. Abby, your thoughts? Hold on a second, Ab.
Echoing Amy and JJ and both of you, there's so many national races to watch that I'm keeping my eye on, and Measure 1, sad about Measure 2. I thought that would pass. But also watching my own District 27, I thought Ruth Buffalo would, she's in third right now, and it's not, it's really close to call, but I'm kind of surprised that she's in third. I thought that she was hanging on in first for a while, but Steeman's at 29%, Christie's at 28%, and then Ruth is at 24%, and then the other Democrat, Kassler's at 18%. So I'll be keeping my eye on that, and the Cass County State's Attorney. That one's still really close, and I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, I am surprised by that one, too. I'm surprised by the Cass County State's Attorney.
The Cass County State's Attorney one doesn't surprise me, even though Youngren was the one that was out there kind of campaigning harder, in my opinion, because there was this quiet support.
True.
That was out there, not as much for her as was against him. And so it was
interesting.
Well, lawyers talk to lawyers.
Yep. Yeah, you're not wrong. And taking a look at Minnesota, I know you wanted us to briefly touch on that because we are wrapping up our coverage here on KFGO real soon. We're going to get to coast in just a few moments, but Rob Kupek still leading against Dan Bomer in that District 4 state Senate race with 53%. So the margin keeps going in his direction in that race.
Yeah. And as JJ Gordon put it, there's a reason to listen to us tomorrow because we'll get you more of this information. Thanks, you guys. Great coverage. Thanks to our news team out there for everybody. I hope we did a good job by you. And you know what? If we didn't, check in tomorrow. We'll do even more. How's that?
We'll name names. Yeah. Thanks to everybody who is on board tonight. Ryan Janke, Tasha Carvel, Paul Juergens in our KFGO newsroom. Don Haney will be on everything come early morning tomorrow with Doug Lear and Dan Michaels.
And thanks to you for hanging with us. It's been good riding with you, folks.